Hello, happy Tuesday. Yes. How are you guys doing? This week has gone really fast already for some reason. It's already Wednesday. Crazy. I don't know. I don't know what's happening. Oh, I can't even. There we go. Hello, Bri. Like nothing's coming up when I'm clicking on it. I am great, Flashbean. Been a good day. Had a good time at my dad's. It is not thundering here. Gabby has thunder, but I don't, not yet. Maybe tomorrow and the rest of the week. So good times. I have, yep, the rest of the week. You have thunder. That's why you said it's thundering. I had to, my son and daughter-in-law and granddaughter came over to go swimming when I got home from my dad's. I do not have snow. Thank you. And so I fed the dogs. I was talking to them, and one of my dogs was outside just going crazy. I'm like, what the heck? So I look on the cameras, and I'm like, yep, there's something out there. I said, it's a snake. And it was. She had this snake. It was so mad at her. This big black snake. He wasn't even on the same side of the fence. Like, just crawl away. He was all up, curled up, like pressed against the fence. And he was so mad. He was just following her with his head. And she's like, I love you so much. So we got her inside, let him be on his way. I'm just like, oh my gosh. I just wish I could explain to her that the forest creatures don't love her. Like, not everything loves her. Like, she loves it. She doesn't understand at all that they would hurt her. Although this guy was very docile. Black snakes are very docile anyway, but he's like, you're so annoying, dog. But he's fine. She's fine. He's gone now. He slithered away. He's not gone because he's like across in the great beyond. What's up, Adair? How you doing? There's Bri. All right. So we have yet another day of Betty and cross-examination in the Betty Broderick trial from 1991. If you don't know, she unalived her husband and his new wife, Linda Kolkena. She and Dan Broderick had been married for 6 months when, as we read Betty's book summary yesterday, when the confrontation in their bedroom while they were sleeping occurred and the self-defense happened. Okay. I have thought about torturing myself because I've read on all the comments, good or bad, for that book. The AI voice is horrible, and I've not listened to that, so I might, just for you guys, see if I can stand it, because I am kind of curious of what's in there, but at the same time, I'm not. So I don't know. I haven't decided yet. But anyway, so we learned yesterday that Dan did withhold some money from Betty in 1986. We heard about $1,300 or so. It wasn't a lot. I'm not saying wasn't more, but we didn't hear about more. But we did learn also, as the state handed her every check stapled with a deposit ticket, that in 1987, she got every payment on time, and every mortgage payment was made, and all her other bills were paid, and Dan paid her $190,000. So it kind of contradicts what she says about I didn't have any money. It's like, Lee, he was paying everything. So I don't know. And honestly, I'm not looking to change anybody's minds. If what you watch in the testimony changes your mind one way or the other, that's okay, whatever. I'm not here to change your mind or try to prove her case or disprove her case or whatever. I just really wanted to watch this, and so that's what we're doing. And it's been interesting. But I was trying to pay attention yesterday when they were going over how much money she'd been paid, because I was very curious. Change my mind. I'm sheeply. I don't know if I can, Bri. How about this? Betty did it. Flash fan. That's not nice. But it is true. So we get closed captions today. That ought to be great. They're very accurate. Again, we have about 2 hours and 20 minutes of testimony, so I will try to let it run and not interrupt very often if I can help it. Sometimes I say that and it doesn't ever work out. I have it boosted. I got to sped up just a little because this prosecutor talks a little fast. So I have to slow her down. Can't keep her going as fast as I would like to. And then we'll see what the end of this day brings, because we got rebuttal coming back at some point, or redirect rebuttal, whatever. You know what I mean? We have that coming back. And then once Betty's off the stand, I do know we go into a ton, well, not a ton. We go into several doctors I don't know if they're psychiatrists. I don't know if they're therapists. I don't know what they are. Probably trying to convince us of how broken Betty was. Not saying she wasn't. Not saying she is. I don't know. I wasn't there. But no matter, you can't just unalive people. It's not the movies. You know, when they hit cut, everybody goes home in the movies. Not here, you know. Nobody's going home. Not even Betty. Henry Lee. Henry Lee, was he the guy in the Simpson case? I don't think he testified. Alrighty. I'm going to go ahead and get this going. I will shut my mouth. And let's see what Betty has to say today.
Did you think in July of 1986, when the court issued the bifurcation order and the order that you get counseling before you have visitation with the children, did you think that it was unreasonable for a judge or any impartial observer to be concerned about your interaction with the children?
Absolutely, because it was based on nothing other than Dan Broderick's attorney's opinion of me and my actions and whatever. There was nobody else there.
In July of 1986, you had already driven the car into the front door. You had already attempted to burn coral reef. You had already left these messages. You had already had these conversations with Danny and Red.
Your Honor, I'm going to object as soon as that's not evidence.
Sustained on the basis of compound question.
Well, you indicated yourself that some of those messages were left on Memorial Day weekend, which was May of 1986. The bifurcation order was in July of 1986.
Are you sure it was 86 and not 87?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you think that?
Yes, Adair. This is the prosecutor cross-examining Betty, and it's funny that he objected the facts not in evidence, because we heard the recording she left on their answering machine, and she did threaten him. They talked about several times her driving into the house. She said she bumped it, like there was no damage. There's damage, but she was nice enough to miss the big white column because she didn't want it to fall down. So we did hear those two things. I forget the third one she said so far. We heard it. We heard all of it. So I'm glad the judge just sustained on it being a compound question. It's like, whatever, defense, we heard it.
It was unreasonable for someone at that point, based on that type of conduct, to be concerned about your interaction with the children.
Dan's attorney to be concerned about my
The
interaction
judge.
was totally inappropriate. Well, the judge had no one of any stature to tell him he was concerned about anything except Dan's attorney.
Well, you're not denying that those things occurred.
I'm not denying those things occurred.
And based on the fact that they did occur,
But did you
was
hear?
it unreasonable for a judge?
Your Honor, objection, there was absolutely no hearing at that thing, and she knows that.
No, there was a hearing, Judge. That's not true, and that's not the question.
Just rephrase the question. The judge was aware of those things occurred. And finish your own question.
The question is, did you think it was unreasonable for a judge to be concerned about your interaction with the children in July of 1986?
I think it was unreasonable for the judge to not have been informed of what happened to me and what was being done to me on a daily basis that might have precipitated someone acting like that.
And you did have an opportunity to be there at that hearing, and you called up and said you didn't want to be there.
I didn't say I didn't want to be there. I
You
said
said
I
you weren't-
could not get an attorney, that I had daily appointments with attorneys every single day. If you look at the diaries before that day and after that day, I could not get a San Diego attorney to represent me. And I'd already been taken
you con-
advantage of in LA because of the 4-hour notice. So
When
I
you
was,
contacted Mr. Hargraves later that year, did you do anything about going back into court to change the custody order?
Mr. Hargreaves wasn't on the job long enough to get there. He only was on the one
question
hearing.
was, when you contacted Mr. Hargraves and when he represented you between September and December of 1986, did you do anything about going
mean
back?
November? November and
I'm gonna
December.
object. We've gone through this before.
She's on cross. Overrule.
He only represented me November, December for the one court hearing of emergency support. We never progressed on to anything else. That was the only issue at hand then.
Besides leaving those messages on the answering machine, there were other things that you intentionally did to harass Dan Broderick. For example, taking his picture, correct? You followed him around at Kim's graduation and took his picture.
No, I don't have any pictures of Dan at Kim's graduation at all.
You didn't take his picture and Linda's picture at the graduation?
No.
You did take his picture and his attorney's picture outside the courtroom when they
Yes.
showed up for hearings, didn't
Yes,
you?
I did, just once.
And you'd walk up and you'd put the camera in their face and take a picture of them,
I
didn't you?
took a picture of two men sitting on a bench, yes. And when I went in court,
Two men sitting on the bench?
sitting on a bench, yeah,
Are you talking about Dan Broderick?
and his attorney.
Okay, well, so you're not just two men sitting on the bench. You walked up in court while they were waiting for the hearing, and you took a photograph of them before going into court, correct?
From quite a distance, yeah. It wasn't harassing them or anything.
Well, they felt it was, didn't they? They said
I thought
something
it was
about it.
very funny that they wanted to seize my camera and seize the film. And in court that day, by coincidence, I had Tricia Smith's file with me, my file on Tricia Smith.
Excuse me, Mrs. Broderick, that's not my question. You've answered the question, thank you. You thought that it was funny to take their picture, yes?
No, I didn't think it was funny. I took it from my files. All my files have a picture stapled on them. Tricia Smith's picture was in Tricia Smith's file.
And you needed to have a picture of Dan Broderick for your files?
I didn't need to have a picture of Dan Broderick. I needed a picture of Mr. Barry. I didn't have a picture
Well,
of
you
him.
took pictures of Dan at the children's soccer games. When he would come to the soccer games, you'd go up to him and you'd take pictures of him there.
I don't remember taking pictures of him. I took pictures everywhere.
Did you testify last time that you took a picture of him at the soccer game?
Maybe I did. It wouldn't have been any big deal.
Referring to volume 8 of the trial testimony, page 26. Does it refresh your recollection that you indicate?
I took pictures of Dan at soccer games, it says. I took pictures of everybody everywhere. So
Well, you knew, I mean,
So if you haven't seen, and there's a good chance maybe you haven't, the miniseries that they made about Betty's situation with Meredith Baxter from Family Ties, there was a scene in there where she is at their daughter's graduation. She's going up to take pictures of her. In the miniseries, Linda walks up to take pictures of, I don't remember which daughter was graduating. I think, I don't know. And Betty turns around and starts taking pictures of Linda. So I don't know if it was Dan or Linda, but she just kept snapping pictures, and I'm sure it was overplayed in the movie. But I think it probably happened. to some extent. So I don't know. Hey, Ronnie, how are you? I've lost my mouse. There it is. Lost my cursor. Looking at the wrong screen. It's going to be one of those days. Tammy thought, I'm real glad you know what I'm talking about. I think it was in the new one, or the newer one, Dirty John series too. Because like I said, I think it happened. Carmen, I don't know what you're talking about. Is that what the closed captions say? I'm tired of this, Grandpa. Well, that's too damn bad. Or are you talking? Could you talk to my dad? I don't know. Okay, here we go.
Dan wasn't just everybody everywhere. You knew that it was harassing to him when he'd show up at a soccer game to walk up and take a picture of him, didn't you?
I didn't walk up and take a picture of him. I mean, if he was in some, I don't even know what pictures you're talking about because I don't remember Dan at any soccer games. But if
Well,
Dan,
obviously, when you testified before that you took pictures of him at soccer games, obviously he had been to soccer games and you'd taken pictures.
if he
of
said
him.
I took a picture of him at a soccer game, I must have taken a picture of him at a soccer game.
I'm not saying he said that. You said that, Mrs. Broderick.
Okay, so now what's the question?
Didn't you know that that was harassing to take pictures of him at the soccer
I don't
games?
consider that no, and I don't think he did either. It would have been outdoors. What would have been harassing about someone with a camera at a soccer game? It was probably a
When you-
video camera.
When you went into his house at Cypress, you knew that there was a restraining order in effect, correct?
I didn't know, but he
Well-
led me to believe that the one from Coral Reef transferred over there.
Well, let's just talk then about after 1987, after you'd had contempt hearings. It was very clear to you at that point that there was a restraining order and you were not supposed to be in the house at Cypress, correct?
As a matter of fact, in 1987, there was no legal restraining order in effect. There wasn't.
After you were held in contempt, was it not made clear to you that there was a restraining order? The restraining orders were again placed into effect and the judge advised you of that.
In 1987, when I was found in contempt, there were no legal restraining orders in effect. But after he found me in contempt of non-existent restraining orders, then new ones were issued because they were made aware for the first time that there weren't any in effect. And they've been holding me in contempt of things that didn't exist.
Well, let's assuming that that's your interpretation of what happened.
Mhm.
The question was, there was no question in your mind after 1987 that there was a restraining order in effect and that you were not to be in Mr. Broderick's house.
Right.
And you didn't care. You never followed that restraining order. You went in whenever you wanted, correct? That's what you testified to.
I was over there a lot, yeah.
And you went in the house continually in violation of the restraining order, correct?
I was in the house a lot, but I didn't touch anything or harm anything or anything. I'd go to see lizards and snakes and
You knew that there was an order of the court.
Right.
You knew that there was animosity between you. You knew that the court had made it very clear that you were not to violate that order and go in the house, correct?
Right.
Did you think that you had a right to just violate restraining orders, or do you think everybody has a right to just violate them?
I just went in when the kids wanted me to see things and stuff.
So you just
If he wanted to find me in contempt, he would have. He always did whenever he felt like it.
Well, you said that you never touched anything when you went in the house. That's not true. You stole things from the house on several occasions, didn't you?
I removed that T-shirt in 1989.
People's 44 is a letter that Linda was writing to Dan's parents. And you stole that letter. You went into his office and you stole the letter, didn't you?
I think that's the same day as the T-shirt in 1989.
Did you go into his office and look through his things and find this letter and steal it?
That was on the desk in Dan's den where we were on the telephone.
And you
I
wrote
believe.
a letter and you rewrote the letter and sent it to Dan's parents, correct?
Uh-huh.
And is not the date at the top of this August 7th, 1988?
Well, that's when it is, and that's when it is.
So it was obviously at a different time than when you went in and you stole the T-shirt, correct?
No, I don't remember when I stole the T-shirt. I don't remember. That letter was announcing their wedding, so I didn't realize they announced their wedding that much earlier than the actual wedding.
So you went into his office and you found the letter and you stole it and you took it home and you rewrote it and you sent the rewritten, your version of the letter off to Dan's parents,
I
correct?
think I sent both versions off so they could see. I'm not sure.
And your purpose in doing that was to hurt Dan,
Was to tell the truth.
was to tell the truth. And by sending this letter that even you, I'm sure, would admit was not a very nice letter to Dan's parents, Did you not have the intent to hurt Dan by doing that?
I had the intent to protect myself, protect my children, and to tell the truth.
And hurting his parents was a way to do that?
If he was hiding behind colossal lie and hurting me and then hurt in the process, I guess that was my decision, yes.
And you knew that sending a letter like this would be extremely upsetting to his parents. There was no reason to
I think
send
his
it other
parents-
than to hurt or upset somebody, was there?
I think his parents, like everyone else, needed to tell the truth.
Was there any reason to send that letter other than to hurt or upset somebody?
Yes, I do that, to tell the truth. If the truth hurts or upsets people, that's too bad.
You also went into the house and stole the wedding list. That was on another occasion, correct?
That was not in the house, it was on the front stairs.
Well, Lee testified that it was on outside the foyer there.
I don't think she did testify to that.
I object to that. Jurors' recollection will prevail. Ask you to stand.
You knew that the wedding list obviously didn't belong to you.
Obviously, yes, it was left on the front stoop for someone to come along and pick it up,
And you also
and I
thought,
came along and picked it up.
and you also thought that that was funny. You thought it was funny to take the list.
I thought it was funny, and I thought it was very useful to me, legally.
You also went in the house and took pictures of the house, correct? Did you walk around the house and take pictures of the house?
I don't remember.
You haven't admitted that before?
I take pictures all the time of everything. I don't specifically remember taking pictures of the house or why I would have done it.
Thank you, Tammy. I'm glad because we do try to have fun here. And I hope everyone has a good laugh because we all need it. It's all good for us. But thank you.
Unless there was something in the picture for some reason. I take pictures of everything.
You also went through his office at one time and found this list that you claim that he wrote about that serving you at the bishop's luncheon.
No, that was in the desk in the garage in Coral Reef, when we lived in Coral Reef. September, October, 85. He didn't have a den in that house.
You went in the house the day after the wedding and ripped open that envelope from Linda's sister.
I was in the house the day after the wedding to pick him up to go to brunch. I didn't touch any envelope.
You didn't rip open any envelope that Linda David testified to?
No,
Nothing like that ever happened.
not that I know of. I was in the house and I met Dennis Broderick in the house and Larry Broderick and Kathy Broderick and everyone was there. And I took Kim to go to brunch and Kim was so sick she couldn't go, so we didn't go.
Your Honor, perhaps this would be a good point for a break.
All right, take our noon recess at this time, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be recessed until 1:30. Please remember the admonition not to discuss case among yourselves, nor allow anyone else to discuss it with you, nor form any opinions until it's finally submitted to you. See you at 1:30. Have a nice lunch. Go ahead.
Isn't it true, Mrs. Broderick, that Judge Joseph said to you on May 4th, 1988, at one of these hearings, I don't think that Mr. Broderick considers this court to be a friend of his on a social basis, and I don't consider Mr. Broderick to be a friend of mine on a social basis. I know of no special relationship between us. I have seen him, as I have hundreds of other attorneys in San Diego County. One of the reasons that this case came to this court to begin with is I believe there have been challenges of other judges, and I felt that I could handle this case in an appropriate manner. Didn't Judge Joseph tell that to you?
I don't remember him saying that, but it's completely opposite of what he did say the first time I met him in a courtroom.
Showing you what's been.
I'm not questioning it, it's in there and that he said that, but that is not what he said the first time I ever laid eyes on Judge Anthony Joseph. He said he had worked many, many years on committees and things with Dan, worked very closely
And
with
this was
him.
in open court when in front of other people and
It was never open court. No, I've never been in open court. From day one, it was a sealed court.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute, but it was in a courtroom, you're saying that occurred?
Yes. And we walked down the center aisle and he started saying, hi, Dan, how are you? To what do we owe the honor? And then it got to the subject of him being a friend of Dan's. I wouldn't have
You
known
were
that.
represented by an attorney at the time, weren't you?
Yes.
And you had filed a challenge against Judge Murphy before you were sent to Judge Joseph, hadn't you?
One of my attorneys had, I don't know which one.
You also said that Judge Joseph was part of this vendetta against you. Part of Dan Broderick's vendetta against you. Isn't it also true that he told you. What's the objection? Isn't it true that he told you that he did not believe that
Your
this?
Honor, it's an objection. This is irrelevant. What he said, she testified just as to believe.
Sustained.
Well, how
Go ahead.
did Judge Joseph ever tell you that it?
Don't remember him telling me that, but if you're in 1988, this is after I threatened him in writing to complain to the Judicial
Excuse
Council.
me, Mrs. Broderick, if you could just answer the question. You indicated you don't remember him ever saying that. Is that correct?
Right, but I understand why he would be at this stage, why he's
You could
making the
look-
record.
If you could look at the transcript of May 4th, 1988, page 6. This paragraph here, do yourself to see if that rushes. As the Judge Joseph was part of this vendetta.
My StreamYard is freaking out. So I am sorry if it's freaking out on your end. Everything shut off. It shut me off the screen. I was trying to watch on YouTube and it's like frozen. Oh, sorry. I don't know what is up with StreamYard. I even tried to fix what they said was still wrong today. And they're like, nah, we don't want to. We're good. Don't worry. We'll wait till you're like trying to do something. Oh. All right. Yeah, I know. I could like that was fine. I know it's probably going to buffer it, which I expect them to, but not kick me completely out and then tell me the last night it did this to me too. Said StreamYard stopped responding, and now it just stopped responding again. So hopefully that it didn't. It's not buffering on your end. I don't know, Carmen. All right. Well, just wanted to make sure everything's good. Let me just check one more thing. All right. Sorry. Here we go. You thought it was a remix. Thanks, Gabby. It's only Tuesday, but I wanted Joe to feel like it was a weekend and you were in the club. I don't know.
And he was lying to you at each of these hearings, and he was part of this whole conspiracy against you.
He wasn't lying to me. He was covering his bottom there because
Well, is
I had
that lying
already.
or not?
He's making a record in his own defense because I'd already complained in writing that that's exactly what Dan Broderick was using the public courts and the
And was this-
taxpayers' money for.
Was this because Judge Joseph had some personal vendetta against you?
No, but he was a friend of Dan's because that's what he told me he was.
And so you're saying that that Dan Broderick
Was misusing the public
bribed
court.
him? Dan Broderick
No, didn't need to.
just used his influence on Judge Joseph, and Judge Joseph is a crooked judge.
Your Honor, I'll
No.
object this argument.
Sustained.
Well, you're saying he's lying, he's covering his
I think there's a lot
bottom,
of influence peddling going on that doesn't involve signatures or records or money at all. But
and the
it's
fact that
very
you were
real.
held in contempt didn't have anything to do with your conduct in violating the restraining orders?
They were, by that point, they were the most ridiculous, stupid contempts. Right, they had nothing to do with reality. It was just insanity. It wasn't hurting Dan Broderick or me or anybody else to not let Danny take the bishop's exam, which I believe is what that one was.
Let's just talk about the contempt hearings. Your Honor, may I have marked as People's Exhibit 85, I have three posters actually, 85A, B, and C.
And their poster boards, calendars.
Yes, of calendars, 85A is 1987, 85B is 1988, and 85C is 1989.
All right, so marked.
The first contempt hearing before Judge Joseph, where evidence was taken, was on April the 2nd, 1987, correct?
I don't recall exactly the date, if that's what the court papers say, yes, but I was served with contempt in
Excuse me,
1980.
Mrs. Broderick, if you could just answer my question. Was the first contempt hearing where evidence was taken before Judge Joseph on April 2nd, 1987?
I don't recall. But if that's what you say, yes.
Let me show you the transcript of that hearing and see if it refreshes your recollection as to the date. And I believe the court has already taken judicial notice of this date. April 2nd, 1987.
That's what that says, yes.
And on that date, you were held in contempt on one count. You were found in contempt on one count. You were sentenced to 5 days in jail, but that sentence was suspended, correct?
You know, I can't do any of this from just memory. Can you refresh
you
my recollection of what that supposed count of contempt was at that point?
Do you remember the first hearing before Judge Joseph and the fact that you were sentenced to some time in jail and that sentence was suspended? You were not actually ordered to serve any time in jail at that hearing. Is that not correct?
That's what the papers say. That must be correct.
And at that time, the judge warned you that if the conduct continued, that there would be jail time.
If you could just tell me what conduct we're referring to, maybe I'd remember more. Are we talking about 85 conduct, 86 conduct, 87 conduct? What was the contempt charge that time?
Your Honor, I have to have an instruction from the court that I cannot engage
This is,
in a colloquy here.
you can't ask her question, Ms. Broderick,
Okay,
but
well,
I
I
think what
can't-
she's saying, Ms. Wells, is that she doesn't understand your question, so you can rephrase it so she can understand it.
At the first contempt hearing, is it not true that the judge warned you that if the conduct that leads to this type of contempt does not stop, the court will, based on its own judgment, not the judgment of Mr. Berry, not the judgment of Mr. Broderick, will be required, frankly compelled to have jail time? I don't want to, ma'am. That's not my way. It's not the way I like to do things. Didn't Judge Joseph tell you that after that first contempt hearing?
I don't know. I got it there. I guess he did.
I'll show you page 7 and 8. Does it refresh your recollection to look at the last paragraph through line 8 on the next page?
I see what it says, but I still don't know which contempt this is.
It doesn't matter which
Okay,
contempt it
fine.
was. It's the first contempt on April 2nd. And did he not tell you that if your conduct didn't stop, and it was the phone calls,
Oh, it was? Well,
in fact, to refresh your recollection, it was a phone message that said, "Dear face."
What's up, Kelly? Good to see you. She's not in contempt here. She was in contempt. I think they're talking about when she was held in contempt for all the dumb things she was doing during the divorce hearings, or not during the hearings, but saying the bad words and all that other stuff. But no, she's not. I would put her in contempt here, but I wasn't there, and I'm not a lawyer or a judge. Well, I'm not a judge. Lawyers can't put anybody in contempt. But I would just put her in contempt for fighting every freaking question. Just answer it. It's not hard. Yes or no? Judge is going to get, it's not twerking Tuesday because Tammy and I have put on the record we cannot twerk. So therefore, it's going to have to be something else. But the remix is real. See, Tammy's on my side. We're gonna have to come up with a different name for Tuesday. We are non-twerkers. That is the truest statement that's been said all day. Hey, Pedaltown. I was just about to hit play. And we're not tweakers either. Your phone has a case of Pedaltown's autocorrect last night, which was hilarious. Top notch. I loved it. Made my whole night.
I'm not making one single cent of a payment on a car that has your name on it. Or am I insuring it or anything? So you're in deep shit, buddy. You've got bills piling up over here. Does that refresh your recollection about that first contempt hearing?
no, because I'm still thinking about all the other contempts in 85 and 86 and 87. What happened to those?
The court has taken judicial notice of the first contempt hearing that was on April 2nd, 1987. There were no prior contempt hearings. And if you want to take a look at the papers that were filed January 14th, 1987, before that hearing, and at the allegation with respect to that message, does that refresh your recollection now?
Not particularly, but if this is what happened on that day, yes.
And it was very clear to you at that time, one, that the court felt that this conduct was harassment.
Excuse me, can I see that paper again for just a second? That says Judge Murphy on it.
These are the papers that were filed.
But it was in front of Judge Joseph, but it has Judge Murphy's name on it? Is that
Yes.
how it goes? Okay, sorry. Okay.
One, it was made clear to you that that conduct was considered harassment by the judge, correct? And he told you that he felt, and he felt any reasonable person would feel, that this was harassing, annoying, and disturbing the peace of Mr. Broderick and the other members of the household. He also told you, I can't help but comment that it certainly has to be annoying and harassing to a parent to know that children are being exposed to that kind of characterization of the person with whom he is having a relationship. He also told you that if the conduct doesn't stop, that he didn't want to, but that he would impose jail time. Is that not correct?
Probably right.
The next hearing was on May 28th, 1987, and at that time there were 6 counts of contempt. And you were held in contempt on 6 counts, and at that time you were sentenced to 25 days in jail, correct?
That's what the papers say, yes? I don't remember all these. It seemed to me I had literally hundreds of contempt things delivered to my house.
Well, you've seen the boards over there that have the markings.
Your Honor,
of what-
that states the evidence. We weren't allowed to put things that weren't in court records.
That's not true. Anything that was served on the defendant.
Anything that was served on the defendant, I think we've taken judicial notice of, and these dates, I believe, are on your exhibits, Mr. Early, is that not correct?
Your Honor,
Are you aware of another contempt here, Mr. Early, that precedes the April 2nd that I did not take judicial notice of?
there are contempt hearings that will continue that are not on here because
Well, I'm talking about, was there another hearing at which any action was taken prior to
there
April
was
2nd?
no
All right,
hearing
then
where
that-
there was an action.
All right, then that's enough. Go ahead.
After you were sentenced to that 25-day sentence to Las Colinas, it is true that within 6 days of that your attorney filed a motion with Judge Joseph to suspend 19 days of that sentence, correct?
If that's what the papers say, yes.
Well, you recall that you got out of jail early, that Tricia Smith
Right.
went to the court and made a request to let you out early, and the judge let you out early, correct?
I don't know how she did it, but yes.
Well, do you recall writing a letter yourself to Judge Joseph in which you told him, I request that you release me from Las Colinas. I understand what you don't want me to do. This has been an enlightening experience, which I do not care to repeat. I won't waste my time or anyone else's with these diversionary tactics. I appreciate the time you've put in.
Those are not now.
Certainly.
I'm reading, Your Honor, from an order of the court.
Show it, Mr. Early.
You can have it marked.
No. I was wondering if I could see the letter, not the court order.
The letter written by the defendant.
If that's what she's referring to.
Hand me the letter.
Let me have these marked, Your Honor.
Equals 86.
86, Your Honor, would be the order of the court.
$87.
If you could take a look at this order, Mrs. Broderick, and the paragraph that is cited by the judge with respect to your request to be released from Las Colinas. Did you make that request of him?
I wrote it, but it is not now and never has been my words. It was dictated to me by Tricia Smith, and I actually refused to do it, but she made me do it. The rest of that letter is all my words, and this very inconsistent little paragraph is tagged on the end of that letter. The beginning of that letter are my
Your Honor,
words.
is next in order.
287, a
Letter written in Elizabeth Broderick's handwriting,
one page.
1 page.
Is there a date on there?
June 1st, 1987.
So mark.
Yeah, 87. Is that your handwriting, Mrs. Broderick?
This is page 4 of the letter. If I could see 1, 2, and 3, then this was dictated to me as page 4. Page 1, 2, and 3 are my words and my thoughts to Judge Joseph at the time. These are not my thoughts, these are not my words, but it is my handwriting.
So you're indicating that you did not want to get out of custody? You weren't making that request from
Let's
Judge
get the
Joseph?
other 3 pages of the letter, and that's the letter that says you can sentence me to 25 years in jail. I will never stop trying to talk to my children.
Judge Joseph never held you in contempt for talking to your children, did he?
He held me in contempt for attempting to talk to my children. And the
Mrs.
phone was
Broderick,
the only way I had to talk
That
to my
message
children.
that we just read, did it have anything to do with talking to your children? Dear, I'm not making 1 single cent of a payment on a card that has your name on it.
Your Honor, I thought we were talking about the May hearing now, where she did get sentenced.
I think we're talking about the sentencing on May 28th, where she got 25 days and 19 later suspended.
Well, are you saying that you did not request from
I'm saying
Judge Joseph that
don't
you
take
wanted to
things
get
out
out
of
of custody?
context. Don't take things out of context, and
Okay.
don't say things are my words that were not. I never said those were
This is your handwriting, right?
correct.
And when you were held in contempt on that second hearing, wasn't one of the messages that you left, I wish you would save your money sending perfectly normal, happy, healthy, wonderful children to psychiatrists when you and the maniacs? Did that have anything to do with talking to the children?
I don't particularly remember the messages. By this date in 1987, I was a ranting, raving, screaming, crazy person. I wanted a settlement. Dan would not settle. He
Mrs.
would
Broderick,
not.
excuse me, I know you said that. My question was in response to your statement before about this contempt hearing, whether or not that message was one of the messages on which you were held in contempt.
I don't know particularly, but these are my thoughts, that he was sending me and the children to psychiatrists, and he would not submit himself to any sort of therapy or anything. And what was wrong with me and the children were the troubles that he was causing us. If he would just give us a settlement and leave us alone, we wouldn't have to go to psychiatrists.
The messages that you were leaving on his machine had nothing to do with attempting to talk to the children, did they?
Most of them did.
After you were released from custody, after you or your attorney indicated that you wouldn't waste anyone else's time with these diversionary tactics, that was June 2nd of 1987. It was June 21st, within 3 weeks, that you left the message that we've already talked about to Kathy Lee. On June 21st, 1987, didn't you call? I believe you've already indicated that you did, with the message, my God, did you say Kathy Lee? Anyway, this is a message for the, etc. That was left on June 21st, 1987, correct?
I wouldn't know what date that was left. All I know is the day I got out of jail, I was served with more contempt papers at my house.
There were no more contempt hearings during 1987. The next one that was filed was in 1988, February 24th, where there was a hearing and you were found in contempt on 8 counts of contempt. Is that correct?
And fired Tricia Smith by this point. And so there were no other, yeah. So now I'm representing myself, I think.
And those 8 counts of contempt, they weren't just phone messages. They were phone messages. They were sending vulgar postcards. They were writing threatening letters. There was the incident of forcing Dan off the road, was the way he described it, coming into the house. There were numerous instances on which you were found in contempt on February 28th, 1988.
That's the
correct?
one I commonly refer to as the dogs, right?
Yes.
That included the dogs, yes. And I had just arrived home from a vacation and he slammed me with papers again.
Again, at that hearing, the judge didn't sentence you or punish you in any way. He essentially suspended the sentence. He
Oh,
found
no.
you in contempt. He sentenced you to 25 days, which he suspended. We sentenced you to a $1,000 fine per count.
Which is $9,000 or $10,000.
It's $8,000. There were 8 counts.
Oh, okay.
And
$8,000.
to attorney's fees, and it was all suspended. At that time, everything was suspended.
No.
Nothing was done.
No, that's not correct. The money was a fine imposed that day.
But you were not ordered to pay it. It was suspended.
No, I don't think it was. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it was. I had to pay it. I had to pay it. Dan actually kept it out of my monthly money. That was so nice of him.
Well, perhaps you're mistaken and you're thinking about the May
No.
4th incident.
No, I'm not.
Isn't it true that on that hearing, on the February 24th hearing, that the judge had intended to sentence you to custody time, but that was the hearing that Dan Broderick requested that you not be sentenced to custody?
I believe that's the next one.
Showing you the transcript that's marked February 24th, 1988. If you would read that paragraph, does that not refresh your recollection with respect to which hearing we're talking
Did
about?
I know what page we're on now?
Certainly.
Page 107.
What is the question?
Does that refresh your recollection about the fact that the judge had intended to sentence you to custody time, but that Mr. Broderick requested there be no custody, and that's why he suspended the sentence?
I'm too busy reading the paragraph about the judge being frustrated.
Mrs. Broderick, if you could
Just-
please read what you've been directed to read and answer the question.
What's the question? Does this refresh my recollection about what?
Does that refresh your recollection about whether or not this hearing on February 24th, 1988 was the one in which Judge Joseph had indicated he was going to sentence you to jail time, but Mr. Broderick requested that there be no jail?
I don't remember that. I'd have to read this more in context and get everything complete.
Does he not say here to you, I had every intention, after reading the material, of imposing the days which had been suspended, and I'm still not sure that that isn't the right thing to do. But I know less about your family than you do, and Mr. Broderick does, and I hear Mr. Broderick saying to me that that's not going to help. It may even make things worse, and I don't want to do that. I do not want to make things worse.
That's what it says there. I'm sure he said it. I don't remember
And
him
he
saying
did
it.
not sentence you to, he suspended everything.
No, he didn't. That has to be wrong. Can we get the real legal papers? I had to pay that fine. Dan kept it out of my money at $2,000 a month, mandatory.
The
Sent to
real
city of
legal
San Diego
papers?
for dropping the dogs off at his house.
Does he not say that the fines and the attorney's fees will be suspended, but will be reinstated upon any further violation of this court's order, which the court determines to be contempt? At this hearing, he suspended anything unless there were further violations of contempt. And it wasn't until May 4th, when there was a further violation of contempt, that he imposed that sentence.
Well, see, I don't remember it that way. I remember that in May 4th, then it was the $16,000 attorney's fees that were payable to Mr. Barry. But I think before May 4th happened, I had been paying at the rate of $2,000 a month, what I just said to you, to the city of San Diego, payable by Dan to the city of San Diego and taken out of my monthly money. That's what I remember.
Doesn't mean that's correct, Betty.
And I would
Well,
have my monthly things to see if that's what in fact happened.
The last hearing, the last contempt hearing was filed on May 4th, 1988, correct?
Yes.
Or was heard?
Exactly.
And that had to do with a message that you left that started with, listen, you insane asshole. I'm not accepting rent by cab, which is unsafe, so that I can be your maid and babysit while you continue your drunken afternoon with your office. Was that not, excuse me, just yes or no, was that not the message on which you were held in contempt on May 4th?
No, it wasn't.
Fell down. Didn't read that all the way through before I
Now,
put it
may I
up
have
there.
marked as People's Exhibit next in order,
88.
in order to show cause, great contempt. The hearing date of May 4th, 1988.
Somewhere.
And I hope she pulls them all out, AT1.
This is a declaration that was filed by Mr. Broderick with respect to that hearing.
Let me see it. You seen it, sir?
I know.
You've seen it. If you want me to take judicial notice, this is a declaration file. Have you seen it?
I'm sure he has.
Yes, I'm sure, yeah.
All right, then I'll take judicial notice of it.
Also, not just because I just want to hear probably the C word over and over and over again, because I do think that's how she referred to Linda. But why start censoring them now when you didn't at the beginning? What happened? It's kind of annoying. Just let it play. We know. You're going to let some through and not some through. Yeah, that's true.
Judge Joseph never said at any of these hearings, and particularly at the February 24th hearing, never said, if you ever come back into court, you're going to jail, did he?
At the February 24th one, no, it would have been the last one. The very last time we were in his courtroom.
And he
I
said,
said to Dan,
if he ever brings you back into court, you're going to jail?
Yes.
And is that somewhere in the transcript of that hearing?
I don't know if it's in the transcript or after it was over, but I know that the judge said to Dan, don't come back in here with these contempts and then surreptitiously argue that she shouldn't go to jail. The point of the contempt is to send someone to jail. So he told him not to come back unless you wanted to go to jail.
But it wasn't the last one that he argued
So-
against jail. It was the February 24th one that he argued against jail. And then there was another hearing after that. So obviously the judge wasn't upset about it at the February 24th hearing, was he?
That's not my recollection. And why my recollection is a mess is I was representing myself. I was an absolute nervous wreck. I didn't hear half of what went on. I
Okay,
didn't
assuming
realize I had been entrapped on the 24th to what happened on the 4th. I never realized that happened.
that that's not your recollection. Let's just talk about what in fact happened on February 24th, 1988. That was the hearing, was it not, in which Mr. Broderick argued against custody?
It may be the same paragraph you already read last time, but I think that no, this isn't what the judge said. No.
This is
It's
not.
what he said that day, but he said it more like I'm saying it the next time.
I'm asking you whether or not this is the hearing in which Dan Broderick argued against putting you in custody.
I don't know. This doesn't say Dan argued against putting him in custody. Mr. Brock saying to me that he's
If you
not
could please
going.
read it
Okay,
to
Your
us.
Honor.
Page 107.
Your Honor, that's not Mr. Broderick on that record. If you could have the page of Mr. Broderick is arguing.
I think it's the judge talking, is what Mr. Broderick told him. We've been through this once before.
Right, same
Right.
paragraph.
I just read it.
But this is the hearing February 28th in which that request was made.
It was made then and it was made again on May 4th.
But it was made here
Okay.
and you came back into court on May 4th and you weren't sent to jail, were you?
The judge does not threaten in there. Don't come back in this courtroom unless you want her to go to jail. That was his precise and accurate threat the last time. Don't come back in this courtroom unless you want her to go to jail. Specifically, that doesn't say that.
And can you point to me anywhere in the transcript of the May 4th hearing where the judge says that?
I wouldn't know. I've never seen a transcript of the May 4th hearing, and I'm saying it could have been after the record was over, and he was just saying that to Dan as a person.
Your Honor, maybe I found a spot for the district attorney. So
Sure.
maybe-
Your Honor, counsel has a right to redirect. This is inappropriate.
Okay, I'll do it on redirect.
Fine. Either way. Show it to her now. or do it on
No, that's
redirect.
okay. I'll do it on redirect.
There was never another action filed for contempt after the May 4th, 1988, correct?
I think so, yes.
Yes, there was not. Is that what
Right.
you're saying? Okay, so June, July, August, September, October, November, December, there were no actions filed in contempt. There were no letters threatening contempt, correct?
I don't know. about letters threatening contempt. I don't know.
Well, do you have any letters that were threatening contempt?
88 to me is a blur. I don't remember anything going on in 88.
You indicated that you kept the letters that Mr. Broderick was sending to you that you thought were threatening, correct?
I kept practically everything and threw it in a box.
Okay, were there any letters that were threatening to file contempt actions in 1988 after that hearing?
I don't know.
Were there any letters that were threatening contempt at any time during 1989? Were there any actions that were filed, contempt actions?
I know I did not go to court on a contempt because I would have been thrown in jail and I would have remembered that. But insofar as him threatening, I don't remember.
You testified that after your separation, that you didn't have any friends to talk to about the divorce, that you weren't able to talk to anybody about the divorce.
1985?
Your testimony was that after the separation, you had no one to talk to about the divorce. Divorce wasn't something that you could talk about socially or with your friends. Isn't it true that you talked about your divorce on an ongoing manner with all of your friends?
On a social, flippant, surface level, yes. On a real level, no.
You never talked about it on a real level with Gail Forbes?
No.
You never talked about any of your problems or any of your frustrations with Gail Forbes?
Gail would be around the house when contempts would come, when papers would come. She was there when the picture came that day. So she would pick up little tidbits and stuff. But no, I never felt I had anyone I could go to and say, look at this problem. What can I do with it? I never went to anyone in that capacity. But Gail picked things up about what was happening. She'd walk into my house and I'd be sobbing hysterically about
Gail Forbes was probably one of your best friends at the time, correct?
She was geographically the closest person because I lost all my other friends by being moved out of my neighborhood. So Gail was the only person I knew in that new neighborhood.
When you say you were moved out of your neighborhood, you remained in La Jolla, didn't you?
But you know what I mean. My neighbors, my street that I lived on for 10 years with kids and open door and coffees and
So
my friends were no longer there on an unexpected basis. These are friends that you don't write an invitation, come for coffee. They were just people in and out.
And isn't it true that people like Helen Picard came for coffee in and out all the time? People like Patty Monahan?
Helen Picard and Betty Monahan did not resurface in my life until end of 87, beginning of 88, and they both testified to that. I didn't
So are
see
you
either of them
indicating-
for 5 or 6 years. They weren't there for 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, I believe was there, both of their testimony. They
You-
came back in my life late 87.
So are you indicating then that you did have friends and people to talk to as of 1987?
At the end of 87, yeah, but I wouldn't have talked to them.
You didn't talk to them about your divorce?
I told them what was happening that day, but I didn't talk to them at a real level of look what's been going on here, besides which nobody wanted to listen.
Well, isn't it true that you lost some of your friends because that's all you would talk about was your divorce and about everything that was happening?
I lost most of my friends through moving out of the house, through losing the children, and through being cut off from the Bar Association social circle. So those were the 3 large categories of friends that I lost by contact. You know,
And you're indicating that from moving to Coral Reef to your house in La Jolla Shores was a cause in losing your friends?
just the kind of friends that are around every day and stuff. I wasn't going to call people and say, look what legal paper came today.
Didn't you continue to have contact with all of your friends in the investment club? Didn't you
The
talk?
investment club was one morning a month for a few hours. We talked about investments.
And you talked about your divorce.
Actually, the investment club in 87 and 88 was at my home. And so they would see the boxes and boxes of papers. But no, we had to talk. We talked business. It was very structured. We did not sit around and talk about anyone's divorce.
So you're indicating at the investment club meetings that you didn't talk at all about your divorce. You tell the other women there what was going on in your divorce.
They would see the papers, and I did have to accept attorney phone calls during meetings sometimes. So I would miss the meetings because it was in my home.
The question was, Mrs. Broderick, did you talk to them about your divorce and what was going on in your divorce at these meetings?
Somewhat, but we didn't hold a meeting on it.
You still had friends, for example, Ann Dick was still a friend of yours, Judy Backus was still a friend of yours, Wilma Engel was still a friend of yours, Candy McCarty was still a friend of yours. You still had tons of friends.
They're my friends, but I didn't really see them much. I didn't go out socially. I didn't call them up and do things. I'm thankful that they're still my friends, but I didn't really see them much.
Well, there wasn't anything that was preventing you from sharing any of your feelings with any of your friends if you had wanted to, was there?
Yes, my own personality. This was a very private kind of thing. And I couldn't go into detail with anyone it was none of their business anyway.
You couldn't go into any detail about your divorce and what was going on, and you kept all this stuff very private? Is that your testimony?
No, people were there and would see certain highlights. You know, people knew the highlights. People knew about banging the car into the door. Doesn't everyone now? People knew about the burning of the clothes and things, but they didn't know anything about what was going on day to day with the children and with the legal thing. And I wasn't going to tell them. Why would I tell anyone? They couldn't help
Isn't
me.
it true that you were telling people consistently about all of these things that were going on? That, for example, your friend Candy McCarty described how someone would see you in the grocery store and say, "Isn't it warm outside?" You'd start talking about the divorce.
If Candy McCarty saw me in the grocery store, that would have been once in 2 or 3 years. I didn't socialize with Candy McCarty, and I probably said, I'm really going through hell and I have to go to court and I can't get a settlement and something like that. But that's not filling her in on what went on for 6 years.
When you went out to Warner Springs, did you not sit down and talk to everybody there and tell them about the divorce? Tell them about all the things that have been going on, people that you didn't even know well?
No, there was a lady that was there for the Notre Dame game in 1989, and she had 3 or 4 little children. And she sat at a table with me, and I was by myself, and we were watching the Notre Dame football game. And I said, my children are there, and I wanted to make sure they were dressed warm enough and stuff.
Is that the only time that you were indicating that you talked to people at Warner Springs about your divorce?
I did not talk about the legal stuff of the divorce. I mentioned that my husband was at Notre Dame with my children, and he was remarried to his office girl, things like that.
Other than that time, which was in 1989, did you have any other conversations at the times you were out in Warner Springs with people about your divorce? You're saying that that's the only time?
Well, if I met anyone and they wanted to know, who are you and what are you doing with your life and stuff, that's what I was doing with my life, was trying to get this divorce settled, but I can't think of any particular people. I didn't keep it a secret. It was the only thing going on in my life, but I didn't have the emotional support of anyone through the whole thing.
In fact,
except Ronnie Brown.
The answer to that, Tammy, is no. Not possible for her. Never. Hasn't happened one time. Ever, ever. Probably in her entire life. I just needed a break from just it's just constant bickering and just so hard to get her answer a freaking question. It's not hard. Not that hard. Puddletown, I would say she's having second thoughts now. And your next one? No? She does have a story for every question, or she forgets the question, or she's reading something else that she never asked her to read. I don't get. Yes, word vomit for sure. Why would she go to a travel game and talk to any other women about this unless Dan's new siege just happened to also attend travel games? You answered your own question. If he is legally married to another woman, he is no longer your husband. Exactly. The biggest victim ever. Nidawai, I don't know if you were still here last night when I read her summary from her book that she released in 2023. And I don't know that she wrote summary, I'll just say that. But it said she went to Dan and Linda's house to confront them and then unalive them in self-defense. Sorry. They're sleeping. I mean, I could say some things, but I won't. I mean, did he pull her under the covers, give her a Dutch oven real quick? And she was like, oh my gosh, I can't. And then boom, boom. I don't know. Sorry. My mind went to a weird place, but it always does. I just, you like a bitter middle-aged woman? I don't mind them as long as they're not, unaliving people in their beds while they're sleeping. I wasn't about to. I'm glad you are. No pew pew, Tammy. You and Shinny. I'm glad you both chose to not take the Betty route. I was not about to cuss. I was trying to be the bigger person, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. Sorry. Yes, freedom is a great thing. I took the childish route just then. That's the nicest way I could go. See if Flash. I was reading the last of your. I was reading the end of your message, Bri. Have a good night. If you're working, as last night, I hope it's an easy night. If you're not working, hope it's an easy night. And it's always good to see you. Middle-aged women don't like to run. They have to make it easy on their knees. Oh, that's hilarious. And on that note, I didn't get you mixed up, Flashman. I was reading the end of his message that had your name in it. Sorry.
Okay, you had Ronnie Brown. Ronnie Brown was a good friend, and you talked to her about it a lot.
I
You had
met
Diane
her.
Black.
I
She
met,
was a good friend.
I met them in late 87, 88, I believe.
And you sent out that Christmas letter way back in 1987, where you certainly weren't keeping your problems private, were you?
No, I think we're talking about the same things, but different things. I didn't keep the fact that I was going through an incredibly messy divorce private, but I didn't speak about particulars.
This letter that you sent out, that it was purports to be a Christmas letter dated Christmas of 1987, you don't think that that's talking about your divorce or talking about any of the specifics of your divorce?
I don't know if it talks about legal specifics, but it describes the situation, yes. By Christmas of 87, I was shouting from the rooftops. I was desperately looking for help.
Well, okay, now I'm confused, because you're either shouting from the rooftop and telling everybody about this,
The
or
general
you're not
picture.
talking to anybody and you're keeping it very private. Which is it?
It's both. The general picture, and I was looking for help. I've already testified. I called all sorts of agencies, including the district attorney's office, looking for relief from the legal situation I found myself in. So I was talking in generalities, but insofar as close emotional support on a day-to-day basis, I didn't have any. And so it's the same thing, but different things, if you understand that.
This picture that was sent to you, that you claim was sent to you in the December of 1986, which is a picture of Dan and Linda. It has the little yellow sticky attached to it. You claim that was sent to you right before Christmas of 1986, correct?
It was late 86. I don't remember exactly when. November or December 86 is my recollection.
And it is true, obviously, that's not signed. It's not signed by Linda. It's true that anybody could have sent this to you, correct? In fact, it says, the yellow sticky says, it must kill you to see these two happy together, correct?
Correct.
And you know, as a matter of fact, that Linda has always denied ever sending that letter to you, correct?
She's never denied it to me or anyone else that I know of. No, she's never admitted it, but she's never denied it either.
You were aware through your children that she had denied ever sending that to you.
No? I know my attorney told Dan to make
Excuse
Linda
me,
cut it out.
Mrs.
Okay.
When you were sent this, how were you sent it?
I don't remember now, in an envelope with a typed outside anonymously.
What kind of envelope?
I don't remember now.
Why didn't you keep the envelope?
It didn't occur to me to keep the envelope. I'm sorry. Maybe I did keep the envelope. I don't know.
You've
Stapled
indicated, this message that's on this, it must kill you to see these two happy together. You've indicated, well, that's typed, right? And you said the envelope was typed too, right?
I think that's why I knew it was anonymous, because there was no handwriting.
And you've also testified that you knew that Linda Kolkena didn't type.
Correct.
Was anyone there when you received that letter?
I believe Gail Forbes came that day, but I don't know that anyone was there when I opened it up specifically. I know Gail wanted to destroy it. She tried to start taking it from me and rip it up.
And you didn't want to destroy it. What you wanted to do with it was send it out to everybody who knew Dan Broderick, correct?
I didn't have any of those thoughts before I got it. When I got it, I thought it was pretty tacky and awful of Linda to have done that. I didn't think Dan did it.
Well, a lot of people challenged you on whether or not Linda had actually sent this. A lot of your friends even said, how do you know Linda sent this to you?
Not a soul said that,
Not
no.
a soul?
It was pretty
On the record,
obvious.
what exhibit that is.
Yes, Your Honor. People's Exhibit,
It's defendant's exhibit.
Defendant's Exhibit, double Y, I believe.
All right, go ahead.
What you did was that you took this and you made it part of your Christmas letter, and you sent it out to all of Dan Broderick's friends, correct?
No, I didn't send it to Dan Broderick's friends. I don't
Sent it to
even
your
know Dan
friends?
Broderick's friends. I sent it to certain people who knew us long-term in our marriage.
And the reason you did that is because you wanted people to dislike Linda.
The reason I actually did it is because her hairdo and my hairdo are so strikingly, we're so strikingly similar in those pictures, it's sick. That's why I did it.
But you've already.
I wouldn't have cared if they didn't like Linda. I certainly
You-
wasn't out looking for friends for Linda.
And you didn't like the fact that other people liked Linda, and you didn't want people to like Linda. And so you sent this out to everybody, telling them that Linda had sent that to you so that people would think, oh my goodness, what a horrible person Linda is.
No, that's all very convoluted. I didn't know anyone liked Linda. Anyway, no one came to me and told me they liked Linda.
Isn't it true that you testified last time, if other people knew she sent me this, they would not have thought this was the nice person that they thought she was?
Well, that's true.
So you obviously had a motive to send this out to people so that they wouldn't like Linda.
I know that Linda acted syrupy, sweet, and innocent around everyone, and she was not syrupy, sweet, or innocent in reality.
Well, you never had any contact with Linda, personal contact.
No, I got it all through the kids.
Okay.
And, oh,
this
excuse me.
Excuse me.
Oh,
This
I was going to
indicates
fix that answer.
that this little yellow sticky says, it must kill you to see these two together, and kill is in capital letters, correct?
Yes.
The rest of it is not.
Right.
And that's the way you wrote this diary entry, when you wrote, there is no better reason in the world for someone to kill than to protect their home, possessions, and family. The rest of it is not capitalized, but that word kill is capitalized, correct?
Maybe I got the idea from that note. That's 2 years later. Can I fix that answer about Linda? No?
You also indicated that you received some wrinkle cream ads at the time. Where are the wrinkle cream ads that you received?
I don't know where they are, but they're around somewhere because they were in an envelope and stuff. And I happened to see them on 2020 the other night. So somebody found them.
You have no idea where they are.
No, they were just newspaper things. And they didn't have any writing.
And were they sent in envelopes?
Typed envelopes with no signature, no nothing.
And you didn't keep the envelopes?
I think I did. I know I wrote save for attorney on the last bunch that came in 1989. The first bunch, I don't think I saved the envelope. There was no way to trace anything.
So you indicated that you kept them, you saved them, you put them in an envelope, save for attorney?
The 1989 bunch,
And you
not the
Don't know what happened to them.
1986 bunch. I don't know what happened to the 1986 bunch. The 1989 bunch, I wrote on the envelope they came in, save for attorney in pencil.
When you testified about these wrinkle cream ads last time, you never said anything about them being in an envelope or putting them in an envelope hold for attorney, did you?
The 1989 ones?
Either one of them. You never said anything about that.
If someone asked me, I would have said that, yes.
Well, you were asked about the wrinkle cream ads.
Did you
were
ask
sent?
me where they were and what I did with them? Because I do remember saying I wrote on an
Did you
envelope.
show that envelope to anyone?
It
That
was
these
on
wrinkle
my,
cream ads came in?
it was on my kitchen counter. It said save for attorney with all the other legal mess. It could have gotten moved to the condo. It could have gotten moved to the storage garage.
When the wrinkle cream ads came in and they were in an envelope, and they had in a typed envelope, anonymous typed envelope, did you show them to anybody?
Who would I show them to? I lived alone.
Well, you
I didn't
showed everybody who came over to your house, you showed them this.
In
Everybody
nine-
that came over, you showed, didn't you?
In 1986, 3 years earlier, if people were in my house the week that came and it was on the table, it was quite fantastic.
Didn't you continue to show this to people in 1987 and 1988 and 1989? Whenever anybody would come over, this is what you pulled out to show them, did you?
No, I didn't have it on,
Well, you
I
pulled
didn't
this
keep
out.
it handy.
You pulled this out to show people, but you didn't pull out the wrinkle cream ads to show them?
It's in my diary what came and what dates it came, I believe. It's all in the diary.
My
I didn't make-
question is, did you show them to anybody else? Anybody else see them?
Maybe Gail did. Ask Gail what she saw the day she saw that.
When you killed Linda Broderick on November 5th, 1989, were you still angry about that?
No.
letter?
Well, it's hard to say. It's just not, again, particularly, that was not particularly on my mind.
Did that have anything to do with your state of mind that morning?
That particular item isolated as such? No.
Yeah, were you thinking about
No,
it
I
on
wasn't
November
thinking
5th,
about that item.
1989? Were
No.
you thinking about back 3 years later when you claim Linda sent this?
No,
Were
it
you
was just
angry about
it was just an accumulation of all the vicious, mean, evil, ratty things she had done. There were no particular incidents.
And you were angry about that accumulation of all of the mean, ratty things, and that's what you were thinking about when you were driving over to her house.
Angry doesn't cover it, no. Angry is what I was in 1986, and scared and stressed is what I was in 1986. By 1987, I was terrorized and a destroyed, distraught, depressed person. By 1989, anger doesn't even come close to covering what was going on.
You indicated, you testified that you never used the word before you received this in December of 86. You received this in December of 86, that's when Gail Forbes saw it. Gail Forbes used that word, and from then on you used the word, correct?
Yeah, I heard Gail use the word, talking about someone at Grey Carey that she thought was after her husband, and she said, that girl is a... And I knew it was a really bad word to use. And so I heard Gail say that. That's not in relation to this picture.
That's what you, isn't it true that you testified last time that it was in relation to that picture, that when you received that picture, Gail Forbes used that word, and that's the first time you ever used that word?
Gail Forbes looked at that picture and said, this girl tried to destroy it. And from there, from that point on, Linda was forever the... But I had heard that word and used that word.
You used it to refer to Linda, too.
Probably. I don't know who else I'd use it to refer
Well,
to.
didn't you last time specifically testify that you had never used the word before you received that letter?
I didn't recall ever using the word cunt.
And it had to be pointed out to you that you had used it at least a year before, correct?
I would only use it in relation to Linda.
Okay, but that's not what you testified to last time, is it? You said you'd never used it before, you'd never even heard the word before, until Gail said it in relation to that letter.
Well, then I misspoke. I heard Gail use that word, and Gail admits that's where I heard that word from. And I thought it was on that exact day, but it was earlier. And I knew that that was the worst word you could use to describe a really foul female human person.
And you were using that word at least as far back as 1985 as well to describe Linda Kolkena.
Maybe. I don't recall such, but maybe.
May I have marked as People's Exhibit next in order?
89.
Bill from Adelaide, dated December 31st, 1985.
So marked.
Showing you People's 89, do you recognize that bill?
We went through this last time. I recognize the bill, but when I wrote that stuff, it doesn't have anything to do with the date of the bill.
What did you write on the bill?
I do not want to pay for these ugly flowers you sent me before you went off with your...
And you wrote that back in 1985, correct?
I don't know when I wrote that. I don't know when I got that bill.
Well, you sent this back to Dan Broderick because you didn't want to pay for the bill, right?
I don't know if I did that. It sounds like that's what I would have done.
Isn't
But I
that
don't
what
know
you're
when I
saying?
did.
I do not want to pay for these ugly flowers you
That's what it
sent?
says, but I
You
don't
sent it
know.
back to Dan Broderick.
I don't know when he would have sent that bill to me that I could have sent it back.
May I have marked as People's 90, a letter dated January 24th, 1986?
So marked.
Do you recognize this letter that was sent to you from Mr. Broderick referring to that flower bill?
I guess so, yeah.
And that's dated January 24th, 1986. So within the next couple of weeks, he sent you back a letter indicating that the flowers were not the flowers that you were referring to, correct?
I'm still not, we never straightened that one out.
What's not straightened out?
That bill never got straightened out because it wasn't, that letter says it's a bill for things I hung on my front door and it wasn't. And it wasn't a lot of
But
money.
there isn't
so I
any
just let it
question
go.
that you were calling Linda a cunt in December of 1985, is there?
That's when I wrote that on that paper.
The flowers, you testified about some flowers that he sent you on November 6th, 1985. Dear Bets, I know under the circumstances, I know the circumstances will make it impossible for you to have a happy birthday this year. But I wanted you to know that the kids and I are thinking of you and hope you start to feel better soon. Love, Danielle. Was this something that you're indicating he was sending to you because he was intending to be cruel and vicious?
Yes.
For the record, what exhibit?
Referring to Defendant's Exhibit II.
Thank you.
A normal birthday card wouldn't say, I hope you feel better soon. It would just say, happy birthday.
Well, isn't it true that he had brought the kids over? He'd taken them out to buy presents for you, and he brought the kids over to give you the presents, and you wouldn't open up the door?
I don't know where you got that story from, but we've all been laughing a lot about it. Nothing like that ever happened.
Well, you indicated yourself that you weren't feeling very well in November.
Also, not true, Betty, because I was sick on my birthday once, and my husband got me a card that said he hoped I felt better, and he got me a cake, and he brought it to me in bed so I could have my cake and eat it too, and I didn't smear it all over the wall like you did. Weirdo. Ah. Yes, he didn't give her money. And I get why she feels that way. I don't have a problem with it. But I've been called worse Puddle Town. Very good summary there, Carmen. Yes, answering machines were invented to torture her, not the people she was leaving the message for. I would never ruin cake for you. Flash fan, wouldn't dream of it. I'm just saying. I've had somebody tell me they hope I feel better on my birthday because I didn't feel good. So it's possible.
Remember,
Oops.
1985, this was the month after you indicated that he had filed the divorce papers. You indicated that he had taken Linda to the Oktoberfest, and you indicated yourself that you were going crazy at that time, that you were upset, that you were anxious, that everything was falling apart.
I was very nervous, very scared, very threatened. I had been through a lot the previous 2 years, but I felt fine. There was nothing physically wrong with me. This was more of the same. You're crazy. Commit yourself. Let me lock you up. Let me take care of you.
Does it say anything about you're crazy in this window?
No, it says, I hope you feel better soon. I was not sick.
And the flowers that he sent you on Christmas. Bets, I hope you have a Merry Christmas. Love, Dan. Was this intended to be vicious and cruel and mean?
Worse, that's the same Christmas he took the kids to Utah with his newly introduced secretary sleeping in a 2-bedroom condo, denied them any access to me, any Christmas decorations, any family tradition, and he has the nerve, and he's threatening me to get the furniture out of the house, or he's throwing it away, and he's threatening me with contempt, and he's filed for divorce, and he's moving to his mansion, and then he has the nerve to send me flowers? Merry Christmas?
Well, we already talked about that threatening letter about the furniture. You indicated that you did want the furniture, correct?
The furniture, we had one set of furniture. If Dan Broderick was moving to another house, I was not going to take beds and chairs away from my children and leave my children on the floor.
In 1985, before he went on his trip with Linda, for the Christmas trip, he sent you a letter telling you that you could have the kids for Christmas, asking you if you wanted the kids for Christmas, correct?
He probably did.
I have marked as People's 91. The letter dated December 2nd, 1985.
So, Mark.
Did he not send you a letter saying, I plan to go to Park City from December 21st to December 26th? Your best. I would like to take the kids with me. On the other hand, if you would prefer to take them somewhere at my expense or want them to stay with you for Christmas, that will be all right with me.
Is this the one that goes on to say I have by 5 o'clock on a certain day to let him know?
The time for making travel arrangements is rapidly running out, so please let me know of your plans by 5 p.m. on December 6th. If I don't hear from you by then, I will assume it's okay with you if I take the kids with me.
I got that letter after his deadline. So he can put December 2nd, 1985 on it, and he can put his deadline of December 6th, but it's a typical Dan Broderick funny to mail it late, and then I get it after the deadline. And there was nothing I could do about it because, oh, you were warned.
In your diary of 1985, don't you indicate on December 3rd that you were informed of the ski trip with Linda?
That's what it says.
3 days before that letter
But that
was.
doesn't mean I got I was informed from that letter. I have found out from the children.
The fact of the matter is that you found out that he was going skiing with Linda for Christmas.
That letter doesn't say that.
Well, you said you knew that he was going skiing.
From the children.
Okay, you knew he was going skiing with Linda for Christmas. You didn't want him to go off and have a merry time with Linda skiing, and so you forced him to take the 4 kids with him.
No, he could have gone off and had a merry time with Linda. I wish he would have, but I needed a place to keep the kids and beds to put them in and a home to have them in so that I could have Christmas with them. And he wasn't offering me any of those things. I was still in
And
the
he had
empty
to offer
house.
those things before you take the kids for Christmas.
He didn't offer anything. He
Okay,
only
he
offered
had to
us
offer
that
something
deadline.
before you take them. Is that what you're saying? You had the opportunity to have them under some circumstances, didn't you?
Your Honor, objection.
No, not really.
States the evidence.
Overruled. You answer that.
No.
The same thing happened in December of 1986, where he sent you a letter describing how you agreed that he was going to have Thanksgiving. You were going to have the kids for Christmas for 2 weeks, but you wouldn't take them because he wouldn't give you the $6,000 for the skiing trip, correct?
That's the $2,000 that he sent for the skiing trip. And that's when Hargreaves was on. And that's when I had no money October, November, December. And that's why I couldn't take the kids skiing that year.
Okay. May I have marked as People's 93,
I too.
92, a letter dated November 19th, 1986.
So marked.
Thank you. Do you recognize this letter referring to the arrangements for Christmas in 1986?
There's no copy to me on this letter, so I don't know if I've ever seen it. It's to Bill Hargreaves with a copy to Thomas Ashworth.
The first paragraph refers to the arrangements that had been made for Christmas of 1986. Does that refresh your recollection about the arrangements that had been
2
made?
weeks ago. This is so typical Dan Broderick. It was agreed upon with whom? What is he talking about? I have agreed to contribute 2,000. He was not speaking to me. We hadn't agreed to anything. But he
Mr.
puts
Broderick, you just testified a little while before that he agreed to give you $2,000, and you didn't
through
think that was
Mr.
enough.
Hargreaves. Through Mr. Hargreaves, I was informed that I could take the kids skiing. My friend Mary Beth Woods and her husband and her 3 children were going skiing in Utah. We were going with them. I made the reservations and went ahead to plan for a ski trip. It wasn't until the very bitter end that $2,000 was all that came for the ski trip, and I couldn't
Plus the
do that.
$10,000 on November the 19th.
The $10,000 of the community property that I got was a regular support payment that is fully spoken for before it gets there. I
Okay.
could not take kids on a $10,000 ski trip with that money. That money was payment money, house payment money and things.
Okay. If I could just have marked as People's 93, an ex parte stipulation dated December, no, it was filed dated December 9th.
986.
Yes.
So marked.
If you could just identify this as the stipulation that you've referred to where Mr. Broderick agreed to pay $2,000 for the Christmas trip, as well as to send the additional $2,300 on the Campstead loan.
I was not a party to this. If my signature is not on it, I don't know about this thing. And I don't think I ever got that money anyway, because I didn't go skiing, so he didn't send the $2,000.
In 1988, you did have the kids for Christmas. You had them the first week of Christmas vacation all the way up through Christmas morning, and then Mr. Broderick had them the following week, correct?
Yes, and I was going to court representing myself in a major trial the day after Christmas, so I don't even remember the kids being there.
So are you complaining that you had the kids for that week?
No, I'm
Christmas?
complaining that every Christmas I was in court or had things pending or trials coming, and whether I had the kids or not, it wasn't really much of a Christmas, that I was losing sleep and staying up all night trying to represent myself in a major trial that started the day after Christmas.
And for December of 1989, that was coming up, you knew also that you were going to have the kids for Christmas in fact, Mr. Broderick had indicated you could have them for the full 2 weeks of Christmas vacation.
I don't know that he said that. In the court paper that I got in January of '89, I was supposed to have them for half of Christmas. And the letter that I read on November 5th informed me again that I would be in litigation over Christmas again. Because if he was going to file contempt and put me in court, we're in November, and here we go again.
The day
November, December,
before.
January.
The day before you killed Mr. Broderick on November the 4th, you were there when Danny had a conversation, when he called his dad to find out for sure what was going on for Christmas. And he informed Danny that he could have Christmas, that he was going to spend Christmas with you. Helen Picard was right there when Danny told you.
We had in writing a verdict that was given in January of 1989 that spelled those things out without question. I didn't need any phone call with anybody. Those
Okay,
things were
but
right in the verdict.
But the phone call just confirmed again that there wasn't going to be any problem with that he wasn't objecting to that there wasn't going to be any problem with Christmas of 1989.
There shouldn't have been. I had a verdict that gave me certain things. I don't know particularly what it said that year, but it was a verdict that said 1 year you, next year them.
So, well, might this be a good time to take the afternoon recess?
Yes, ma'am.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our afternoon recess at this time. We'll be in recess until 3 o'clock. Please remember the admonition.
I wish we got a recess. Church lady's
With
back.
respect, Mrs. Broderick, to the warning that you indicated that Judge Joseph gave to you about going back to jail if you were found in contempt again. If you would take a look at the May 4th, 1988 contempt transcript, page 63, starting line 17, and read through the next page, line 7. If you just look at that, does that refresh your recollection of what you're indicating with respect to his statements to you? And Judge Joseph was indicating.
Did that get too loud on your end? Because it got louder on my end. So if it did, tell me, I'll bump it down a little bit. But yes, church lady is awesome. I don't know where she keeps going. She must have had appointments or something. She needs to stay there. I wonder what she's doing nowadays. I wonder if she's still alive.
Getting there to you that his first concern was for the children and the difficulty that was created for the children and not wanting the children to suffer, correct?
Yes.
And he was also indicating his frustration at the contempt hearings and at holding you in contempt and the continuing contempts.
Frustrated with the progress of the case, yes.
He indicated that he felt that you were obviously an intelligent person, you understand the orders, and no matter what your frustration level is, you must resist the impulse to make the same statements over again in any manner where they can be heard by Mr. Broderick or the children or anyone else who's a resident in that house.
Right.
And he indicated, I expect you to comply with these orders, and if you don't, you're going to be back here, and I'm going to make a decision. And no matter what the fact of the decision is, you're going to be back in law school.
Right.
There were no other contempt actions filed against you after this, correct? I believe you've already testified to that.
Right, except the November 5th letter.
Now, you testified last week that you wanted Danny to take the bishop's exam. You were frustrated about the fact that he missed that exam. And you were angry at Mr. Broderick, and you said, quote, "Why are you doing this to your children? You've had your good education. Why are you doing this to the kids?"
Yes.
It is true that Francis Parker, the school that Danny was going to, is a very good school in San Diego.
Yes.
Correct? It's a very well-known private school.
Yes.
And so they were obviously getting a very good education at Francis Parker.
Right.
Danny had always gone to Francis Parker, correct?
Yes.
And it was close to where they lived in Marsden Hills.
Yes.
And he was doing very well there. He was getting good grades. During
Yes.
the time that he lived with Mr. Broderick, during those years, he was getting very good grades and being a good student.
Yes, Danny always got good grades.
And Rhett also went there with him as well.
Yes.
The school liked them both.
Uh-huh.
And the psychologists felt that that was one constant in their lives that was good for them and that they should stay at Francis Parker.
Well, I wouldn't have known what a psychologist thought at that time because they weren't telling me what they thought.
Okay. The fact that Danny did not go to Bishop's and stayed at Francis Parker obviously did not affect their ability to get a good education, correct? They were getting a good education at Francis Parker.
Yes.
Now, you also testified with respect to the children that there was an everyday, constant, ongoing problem with them having no food, no milk, no cereal in the morning.
That's what they would tell me, yes.
Now, is your testimony that in 1986, 1987, 1988, 1989, that this was a constant, everyday, ongoing problem that they had no food in the morning?
The breakfasts were an ongoing problem, yes.
In
There were
1980
times when it was a little better and it quieted down. But basically, they would complain to me that the mornings, especially, whether it was a weekend or a school morning, that there was no breakfast food in the house that they could fix themselves, and there was no one there serving them.
In 1989 and 1988, when Sylvia Cavins was working there, are you indicating that they were complaining that there was no breakfast food?
I thought Sylvia was a good babysitter and she had maturity and stuff, but yes, they still complained to me about the specific breakfast foods and no milk and no cereal and no fruit. And
You had indicated that you had disagreements or you didn't like the various babysitters that Dan had over the years. You had problems with them. It is true, though, that for the last 2 years, or the 2 years prior to Mr. Broderick's death, Sylvia Cavins was working there, and Sylvia Cavins was a very accomplished and good babysitter housekeeper.
she was a mature person that had good judgment, and Dan treated Sylvia better than he had treated the real young girls he had earlier. And he respected when she requested a change or something, and she was okay, but
The fact of the matter is that there wasn't any problem then with the babysitters or the care that they were taking for at least the 2 years prior to November the 5th of 1989.
the problem being that I didn't want my children having a babysitter. That was the last 2 years when I was determined I was going to get my children back.
You indicated that the babysitters, that Dan couldn't keep any of the babysitters because they couldn't stand him. Isn't it true that the babysitters all liked him very much? Or Sylvia Cavins liked him very much, Robin Tua liked him very much, Linda David liked him very much, Marta Shaver liked him very much. They didn't quit because they didn't like Mr. Broderick.
Well, you didn't bring in the ones that didn't like Mr. Broderick. There were a whole bunch of other ones with other names and other times, and you're only dealing 87 beyond.
Okay.
There were
so
lots
we'll
that
go-
quit because
we'll
they
go
hated Dan.
backwards. Sylvia Cavins was there for the 2 years prior to November the 5th.
I'm not sure if it was a full 2 years, but she was there for a while.
She indicated that she was hired in December of 1987, so 2 years less 1 month.
Okay.
And prior to her was Linda David, who was there for at least approximately a year.
Mhm.
And prior to her was Robin Tua, who was there for approximately a year. So that the prior 4 years were those babysitters who there really weren't any problems with.
All I know is what the babysitters that I knew told me,
Okay.
that there were lots of problems and they didn't like Dan, and he was cold to them and he read them notes and he was never happy. And I had Marika was the main one that complained to me.
Well, Marta Shaver was the first one who worked for him back in 1985 when he first
She
moved to.
I don't think she was the first.
She was one of the first. She
one
was
of the
there for
first.
quite a while, correct?
I don't know how long she was there, but I think there was a girl with curly hair there before Marta.
Well, did you think that your kids were being starved, that they didn't have any food
Back then, yes.
in 1989, in 1988, in 1987? Is that what you're saying?
89, 88, 87.
Yeah, well, let's forget about years and years ago. Let's talk about the 2 or 3 years before
As
November
the children were
5th.
getting older, they were always complaining to me that there was nothing in the house, and that's how Rhett got hit by a car. As he got on a bike to go up to a Jack in the Box to get French fries after school because he was starving and no one would give him a snack or something. So they would complain like that to me. I'm sure when Sylvia
Did you really
was
think
there,
that they were starving?
only what they told me. No,
I know,
didn't
but
think
did you really take it seriously? Did you really think
Their
they were
complaint-
starving, or did they want some junk food? Or
their
I mean, was-
complaint was there was dinner food for Dan, and when Dan came home for dinner, the family sat down to a dinner. If Dan did not come home, they were sent up to University Avenue for fast food, and they didn't get a dinner.
Okay.
And there was not snacks, there was not fruit. And remember, please, that the babysitters were not there on the weekends, Friday night, Saturday, or Sunday, and they were never there for lunch or mornings, even during vacation. And summers were a huge problem because the babysitters didn't come until later.
Was this something that you were thinking about on November the 5th, 1989, when you drove over to Dan Broderick's house?
Not specifically, no.
Did it have anything to do with your state of mind that morning and why you were angry?
Everything that took place for the previous messy years built up, but no, not that specifically.
And you have indicated that as the children got older, obviously the problem was not getting worse. The problem, if there was a problem, was
Getting
certainly getting better.
Yes, definitely.
We've already talked a little bit about the attorneys that you hired. You had indicated that no one would represent you because they were afraid to go up against Dan Broderick. Obviously, that wasn't true with respect to Dan Chaffee. He was not afraid to go up against Dan Broderick, and he was willing to represent you, yes or no?
Sort of, not yes or no, as he has testified. He did not want to represent me because he was in LA. But
Did that have anything to do with being afraid to go up against Dan Broderick? He wasn't afraid to go up against Dan Broderick.
No, but he didn't want to be bothered either. And he wasn't a San Diego lawyer.
Did Bill Glexman indicate that he was afraid to go up against Dan Broderick? He was willing to represent you, wasn't
But
he?
he wasn't a San Diego lawyer. That statement was made about San Diego lawyers.
Okay. Did Bill Hargraves indicate to you that he didn't want to represent you because he was afraid to go up against Dan Broderick? Obviously not, right? He represented you and he wasn't
He was
afraid to go up.
anxious to take this case and go up against Dan Broderick.
As
so
were
that he could
many,
make
many
himself
attorneys
famous.
in town, weren't they? It was
There were a
good
lot of
case.
incompetent attorneys that solicited this case at night at home and were dying to represent me in this case.
Only the incompetent ones wanted to represent you and all the competent ones wouldn't do it. Is that what you're saying?
That's how it worked out, yes.
Tricia Smith wasn't incompetent,
No, but I hadn't heard of her in the beginning.
but that's not what we're talking about. She was willing to take your case and she wasn't incompetent and she wasn't afraid of Dan
But I
Broderick.
hadn't heard
was
of
she?
her when I was looking for an attorney in 1985.
Okay, well, so then there wasn't a problem as of 1987 when you hired Tricia Smith, correct?
And she was in Del Mar. I was, looking for a San Diego city attorney. She was
Is
in
that
Del
why
Mar.
you fired Tricia Smith, because she was in Del Mar?
No,
Okay.
I fired her because she couldn't get anywhere against Dan and it was a colossal waste of money.
The fact is, even Mr. Hargraves, when you talked to him about the fact that nobody would take the case, everybody was afraid to go up against Dan Broderick, he talked to you about the fact that that wasn't true, that there were 7,000 lawyers in San Diego, many of which would willingly take this case.
That's what I said to you. There were lots of them that wanted to get involved with the case for the notoriety of having it. Just getting to know Dan Broderick would have been a feather in Bill Hargraves' cap. He wanted to be a participant in this case because of the mediation and stuff. It would have been
Okay,
a great
what if-
feather in his cap.
What about B. Snyder, Rebecca Prater, Sandra Morris?
Sorry, Rebecca.
Prater, Prater. Those were all good, competent lawyers who would have taken the case, weren't they?
Well, I don't know how good they were then. Bea Snyder herself was going through a divorce and cried at the one appointment I had with her. I was referred to her as a wonderful attorney. She broke down in tears and cried about her own divorce at my appointment. And I thought, well, I guess she's not really in quite the shape to take on my case. So that's why I didn't hire her. And Tricia Smith ended up being in her own divorce during my case too.
And what about Rebecca Prater and Sandra Morris and the other attorneys that were recommended to you? None of them quite fit the bill for what you wanted, did
None
they?
of them were like Dan Jaffe, correct. Dan Jaffe, and there was a man in North County, Hennenhofer. Hennenhofer would have been exactly the kind of attorney I needed.
When you hired Tricia Smith, you thought Tricia Smith was exactly the type of attorney that you wanted. That's what
I
you
thought
said.
she was good. Mhm.
Okay. In February of 1988, you fired Tricia Smith.
Yes, in the courtroom in frustration. Excuse me, I don't think I fired her. I told her I didn't want her to represent me on that contempt order on one of those days, the second to last one.
Well, you also completely and irrevocably fired her from representing you in any way, shape, or form, didn't you?
No, I didn't. In fact, I wanted her to continue and represent me on the divorce, as did the judge in the courtroom that day. She was just not representing me for those contempts because I thought they were a waste of time and money.
May I have marked as Exhibit 94,
Four,
a letter dated January 18, 1988.
so marked.
Did you not send a letter to Tricia Smith saying, "So much for your Ruth Roth idea. I have felt totally unrepresented by you since the summer of 1986. I have felt raped and robbed by your methods of extracting fees, always in advance of any services. I can no longer afford the emotional or financial strain of calling you my attorney."
I don't know if I ever sent her that letter.
Okay.
I know I wrote it because I was extremely frustrated about the waste of money and her not getting anywhere. I was
Do you
just,
recognize that letter?
I recognize my writing. I don't know if I ever sent it. I wrote a lot of things that I never sent.
Well, do you recall at that hearing in February of 1988, Tricia Smith telling the judge that she had just received a communication from Betty Broderick indicating in no uncertain terms that she did not want me to be her attorney for any purpose any longer?
I don't know if she's referring to this letter, but that was not the discussion as I recall it in the courtroom, if you'd read on.
If you would take a look at the transcript dated February 24th, 1988, page 1, the yellow portion, does that refresh your recollection about what Tricia Smith told the judge?
but so you have to read on for the discussion that ensued, is that I definitely wanted her to represent me on the divorce, but if that meant going into court on stupid waste of money contempts, I did not want to pay an attorney to waste time and money like that anymore.
Did she not tell the court that you indicated to her, based on a communication, which presumably is that letter, in no uncertain terms, that you did not want her to be her attorney for any purpose any longer?
That's what she said there, but
Okay.
if you keep reading on, it was agreed upon in court that she would continue representing me on the big picture divorce and that something would be done. And that's the same hearing where she
She never
complained.
continued to represent you. You fired her.
No, I didn't fire her.
You don't say even in your own book that you fired her? Wait a minute.
She's gonna go find it. She's gonna go find it.
I have fired Tricia Smith. I can't stand the emotional and financial cost of having her anymore.
When is that?
This is the
But when is it
reported
talking about?
book. I'm just asking you at any point, did you fire Tricia Smith?
No, I really didn't fire her. We had in the courtroom, I was totally frustrated with what was happening and the way that she took that check that we came up earlier, that there was a $221,000 check and she took half of it or something. And so I was frustrated with Tricia Smith, but I didn't fire her and I wanted her to stay on the case. And it's in these transcripts somewhere.
Did you say in your book, or
She was getting nowhere.
did you say, I have fired Tricia Smith?
That's what it says, but I don't know at what time it's talking about.
Did you fire her or
After Tricia Smith
not?
left
Did you
town.
say, I can no longer afford the emotional or financial strain of calling you my lawyer?
Right.
Did you also say that you had fired her because you thought she was kissing up to Dan Broderick?
Oh, that's about the friendly letter she wrote to Dan without a copy to me. Dear Dan, I know you're getting this big check. If you'd send me this big check behind Betty's back, which wasn't printed in there, I will send you back your half within 24 hours, and I'll keep her half of this big check for my attorney's fees. I didn't even know that check was coming, and I was very upset that she did things like that behind my back.
And
Your own
fired
attorney's not
her.
supposed to do that.
And you fired her, right?
No.
You felt she was kissing up
I
to
wrote
Dan
things like
Broderick.
this, that I was getting very upset that she was doing things behind my back, and she charged me over $30,000 at that point and never gave me an accounting of why I owed her $30,000. And still has never yet done that. It was $37,000, I think.
So I've heard attorneys say there's not a lot that they would get disbarred for, but if you mess with the client's money, you will, and you get caught, you're going to get disbarred. I'm pretty sure Tricia, whatever her name is, Smith, was not going to risk that for Betty. Oh my gosh. Could this thing, like, she is just delusional.
Did you not say in your book that now it was becoming more and more apparent that Tricia Smith was kissing up to Dan? By becoming a friend of Dan's, her career would be launched as one in the in crowd. Before taking this case, no one had ever heard of Tricia Smith.
That's true.
So her writing a letter to Dan Broderick about
Getting
the
money,
splitting of a community asset, you felt was inappropriate.
the way she did it, and the way that she would not let my books for a moment reflect that I got that money in. She did it very improperly, in fact,
Okay.
illegally. I have no
You
way to
also-
prove I paid her all that money.
You also, at the time that you fired her, at least that she indicated in no uncertain terms, you had fired her on February 24th, 1988, that at the same time you fired Brian.
So, dear, I understand, and I'm kind of with you. But last night, at the end of the stream, I brought up the fact that she released a book in 2023, and we were, I read the summary of the book. I'm not saying she wrote the summary, but it said that she unalived Dan and Linda in self-defense. So I don't know if that's her defense here, and so they have to prove that that's really not what happened, and it just takes all this stuff. I don't know. I really don't know what they're going through. Oh, if I had to be locked in a room with Betty or Lori, is there a window? Because I'm going to pick that and hope it's on a high floor. Yes, she's trying to say Dan made her do it. Dan did not make her do it. He didn't make her do the last part. He may have drove her crazy. He may have made her mad. Like, there's a lot of things he may have made her feel, but he didn't make her do that. You once had an estate case with one of the kids who wrote a book about her life as a mole. Your boss would not allow you to expense it. Well, that sucks. You're saying both because you're bringing 8 seconds with you. But man, they're both Lori and Betty are both their own kind of crazy. They're just special. Not in a good way.
Brennig, who had been appointed as the appraiser on your behalf. You fired Ruth Roth, who had been appointed to mediate the case. You fired the accountant that she had had assisting on the case. You indicated that you wanted to handle this yourself and had fired all those people.
This was, as I was going to say, the beginning of 1988. I was fed up with everything. I couldn't have fired Ruth Roth and Brennig and some accountant that has no name because I never hired those people.
But you knew that Tricia Smith had hired them on your behalf to represent you in this case. She was representing you. She'd hired an appraiser. She'd hired an accountant. She tried to get Ruth Roth to mediate. Everything was going along and moving forward.
Everything
And you
was going
came in
nowhere.
and fired them.
This is a year after I hired her. A 12-month calendar year. Nothing had been accomplished insofar as anything. A whole year later.
Right, but things were starting to be accomplished
No.
because these people had, okay. Does
Dan
it
Broderick
indicate,
never sent those records over, and this is
does it
probably,
indicate, excuse me, on February 24th, 1988, line 15 through 19, that you had also fired Brian Brennig?
that's what it says there, but I couldn't have fired those people that I never hired.
At the time, you knew that the court had ordered Dan Broderick to pay the fees for these people. She'd gotten an order for the court to pay, for Dan Broderick to pay $12,000 to Tricia Smith for her attorney's fees, $5,000 to Mr. Brennig to begin work, another $2,000 for depositions. This was money that the court was ordering Dan Broderick to pay, your expenses on the divorce, $5,000 to Tricia Smith's billing as justified, additional amounts as necessary on notice motion. You were aware of that, correct?
All I was aware of, he was ordered to pay Ruth Roth, and then she ended up suing me because he refused to pay.
May I have marked as People's 95?
95,
Minute order, dated April 2nd, 1987.
so marked.
If you could take a look at that minute order, does it refresh your recollection about whether or not the court had ordered Dan Broderick to pay the fees for these people?
Yeah, but I don't know if he did.
Well, they got fired.
A year later. It's 1980. April 1987 order. Now you're talking about 1988.
Remember Dan Broderick court after $19,000 that you paid
It was never
for Mr.
used.
Brennig?
It was
They
never
were used, that's right.
You had Patricia Smith, didn't pay attention to that, so I wouldn't have known that.
You were present. Correct?
When I hired Tricia Smith, I had gone through the Hargreaves, Glucksman, Christmas of the no support and trying to get emergency support and the reconsideration. And looking back in my diary, from the first I hired Tricia Smith, I called her every day. I was hysterical. I needed something settled in early of 87. And I got, as 87, the year went by, and I got more and more frustrated and more and more depressed and spent more and more money and nothing happened. I got extremely upset with frustration at Tricia Smith and the system and everything else. 87 was a
upset
very
because
bad year.
She wasn't being forceful enough,
Right, she wasn't getting anything done.
but she wasn't being forceful enough with your words. She
Well,
wasn't being
whatever it
aggressive
takes to
enough.
get something done, she couldn't get anything done. Nothing,
And when she didn't return your calls, this is what was causing so much anxiety and distress.
right? She was getting married, she went on a honeymoon, her friend had a baby, she took vacations, she was not returning my calls, and I
She
was
had a life to live beyond representing you, is what you're saying.
very much so, and I was a basket case before I even found her. So I was very, very nervous and desperate to get something settled before she even came on the job.
And you, you referred to the letters that she had sent to Mr. Broderick, and Mr. Broderick sent to her regarding the sale of the Fairbanks Ranch. May I have marked, Your Honor, as equals 95.
96.
A series of 1, 2, 3 letters.
Good advice,
All
Ronnie.
three letters marked 96?
Yes.
All right.
If you could just take a look at these letters and simply just identify them for me. Are these the letters that you're referring to, where she was writing to Mr. Broderick and he was writing back to her regarding how to split that $222,000?
I wouldn't dream of it, Pedaltown. You might be onto something, 81.
You know, what's the question about this one?
Are these the letters that you're referring to? You indicated that you were angry about her letters to Dan Broderick, where he,
I've never seen this letter before. All I knew was the one, this is a letter from Dan Broderick to Tricia Smith telling her about some check coming. All I was aware of was a letter from Tricia Smith to Dan Broderick, because I was never aware of this check coming at all, and none of these letters are copied to me. And I didn't even know this check was coming until it was too late.
well, then how was it that you were upset about her overly friendly letters to Mr. Broderick?
When I went to her office and she was on vacation, I asked for the file and I saw this letter. The secretary gave me the file and I saw this letter with no copy to me, and I was absolutely flabbergasted. I had no idea about the money or anything.
So for the record, you're referring, when you say I saw this letter, since we had several of
At
them,
her office.
you're referring to the letter that's dated August 18th, 1987, where it starts out, "Dear Mr. Broderick," and it ends, "Very truly yours, Tricia Smith."
I think that's the one I saw, yes.
And that's the one that upset you because you felt that she was kissing up to Dan Broderick.
I thought she was doing things behind my back. She never told me this check was coming. And she obviously knew since the day before this letter, because Dan wrote to her and told her this check was coming. I had no idea the check was coming, and I did not approve of the way she handled her getting that check in her account and paying me back my half less what she said I owed her, when giving me no accounting whatever of how and why I owed her that much.
And you wrote a letter to Dan Broderick telling him, which is included here, telling him that you didn't want that to happen. You wanted the letter to be, or the check to be sent directly to you, correct?
Yes, that's exactly right.
You wanted to report Mr. Jaffe to the state bar for his handling of the case. You wanted to report Mr. Hargraves to the state bar for his handling of the case. You wanted to report Tricia Smith to the state bar for her handling of the case.
No, only Mr. Hargreaves.
Do you not indicate in your diary here requesting attorney disciplinary procedures on Mr. Jaffe for non-action, on Mr. Hargraves and Tricia Smith for non-action?
What's the question?
Did you not, were you not considering requesting attorney disciplinary procedures against each of the attorneys who represented you?
No, this doesn't say that at all.
Requesting attorney disciplinary procedures.
I don't know what that means.
Is that your handwriting?
Yeah, but I don't know what requesting attorney disciplinary procedures would mean, except it asks for the instructions to complain about somebody or something.
May I have this marked here on those people's exhibit books?
97?
97.
We have a volume of the diary that.
Certainly.
I'm going to have to look. I don't have it at the top of it.
All right, just supply
It's
it.
dated September 22nd, 1987.
Thank you.
Obviously, after 1989, after January of 1989, when the divorce was over, you hired Mr. Hauslein, Herman Hauslein, to do the appeal, correct? And you hired Walter Mond to represent you for the seeking custody of the boys.
I hired Walter Mond. His friend was Herman Hauslein. He referred me to him.
You hired both of those attorneys to represent you in 1989.
Yes.
So there wasn't anything that Mr. Broderick was doing to prevent you from being represented by an attorney at any time during 1989, was there?
No.
Okay. And you indicated that having to go to court was something that distressed you, that you did not want to have to do. It is true that Mr. Broderick offered to stipulate to the bifurcation so that you didn't have to go to court, correct? He sent you a letter explaining what that was.
Right, and I would not sign and agree to that. I would agree to any sort of a settlement or split of things. I would not agree to across the board divorce with no settlement. That would be
Well-
very foolish of me.
Didn't he send you a letter explaining that this was just a bifurcation of the divorce status and didn't have anything to do with settling the case one way or the other?
Correct? There wouldn't have been a reason in the world I would have signed that.
Because you had no desire at that point to get a divorce. You were not.
Oh, I
going
had
to
every
sign-
desire in the world to get a divorce, but a
In March?
divorce to me means community property support, children, visitation, custody, those sorts of things. A divorce doesn't mean an empty piece of paper and I get nothing.
Mark, may I have marked as People's 98, a letter dated March 31st, 1986.
So marked.
If you could just identify, did he send you that letter?
Yes, dear Bets.
Is there something wrong with Dear Bets?
Yes, if you compare it to other legal threatening things, it's Dear Elizabeth. Dear Bets is what he says when he wants something real nice. Dear Bets, agree to this like a fool, and I'll leave you alone. And it's like, no. It doesn't say Dear Bets on any other of the letters you have there, believe me.
December 2nd, 1985. Here's a letter that says Dear Bets.
Is this the one, get your furniture or else? See, this is another one, just like it. And you were refreshing my recollection. These letters look innocuous on face value, just like the one on November 5th is going to look innocuous. Those letters say all kinds of hidden messages to me, like Dear Bets, I'm taking the kids for Christmas. That's a threatening letter with his deadline that I got it after the deadline. And look at that face value. No problem there to anyone else in this room, right? And that was a really ratty letter, Dear Bets.
He did make a settlement proposal as well in May of 1986. He sent you a proposal attempting, making a proposal for settlement, correct?
A proposal that I could not decipher anything and I had no attorney at the time. And I would never agree to anything.
People's 99. A document entitled Marital Settlement Proposal dated May 7th, 1986.
So marked.
If you could just identify for us, did he send you this marital proposal?
Right. Right.
Did you consider it a threat that he entitled this dear Bets as well?
Yes, because he wanted me to agree to it. By that point, it was like, oh no.
He did originally agree to mediate the case with Bill Hargraves. He came down for a meeting at Bill Hargraves' office, correct?
I was surprised he showed up. Yes, he did. He showed up.
And obviously, he didn't have to. There wasn't any court order that made him go there. He agreed to go there and show up. Okay?
Right.
He also agreed to arbitrate the case in 1987 when Tricia Smith was on the case. He wrote her a letter offering to arbitrate rather than go to trial.
I don't know if we did that.
He agreed to mediate the child custody issue with Ruth Roth, correct? He agreed to go to Ruth Roth, just like you were going to Ruth Roth to attempt to mediate the child custody dispute.
I thought that's what we agreed to in court and stuff, but then he wouldn't pay Ruth Roth, and that didn't work.
You're indicating that the mediation fell through with Ruth Roth because he wouldn't pay?
I know we didn't pay. I don't know the exact sequence of events, but I know she ended up suing me and I had to go to court and show the judge.
That's because you were supposed to pay for your bills and he was supposed to pay for his bills.
No, that's why I won in court. No, the letter said that if he demanded that I participate in that he would have to pay the bills, and then he refused to pay. So I won that case in court where I represented myself.
He tried to get a firm visitation schedule when you were having problems going back and forth, when it wasn't working out with the kids, trying to make the arrangements. He wrote you a letter trying to get you to tell him what weekends you wanted, what weeks you wanted, so that it could all be settled without having to use the kids, didn't it?
What time frame you in?
In 1988. May have marked on her as People's 100. The letter dated May 11th, 1988.
So Mark,
All right, I'll defend her on one thing, and one thing only so far today. Betts was a name that Dan used to call her. So it'd be, to me, like a pet name. And if I was in her shoes, I would not want him calling me Betts anymore either, because it was probably a term of endearment. If I was getting a divorce and my husband wanted to call me by some name like that nickname that only he called me, I would be like, that, you can't use that anymore. So I'll give her that one. But she referred yesterday to Dan calling her Betts all the time. And then today, which is just a few hours in that time frame, is it's not okay. All the hidden messages that we're all missing. I don't know.
Do you recall this letter being sent to you, asking you to give a list of weekends or a list of weeks that you wanted to have the children so that it could be set, the schedule could be set, and there wouldn't be any misunderstanding?
This is a letter from his attorney? Not from Dan? I don't remember this letter. If I read it, I might remember. By May of '88, when they weren't showing up at the mandatory settlement conferences and everything, I didn't even read. If I got this letter, I didn't even read it. And look, but I wasn't agreeing to anything that they presented to me like that. I wanted a full
So
set.
even though they were offering to attempt to resolve the scheduling of visitation,
Right.
and giving you a schedule where you could request which weekends and which weeks you desired to spend with the boys, so that it would be set, you just
In May of '88, that was much too late. Too little, too late, as the saying goes. It's 19.
So you weren't willing to agree to any kind of visitation?
No, we were going to trial on this case.
Okay.
It was way beyond any kind of agreement. And I didn't have an attorney. I wasn't signing up for anything with them.
He did go to the court-ordered conciliation meetings. He went to 3 different ones where he was ordered to go to.
This is 1985.
1986 and 1987, 2 in 1986 and 1 in 1987. And you didn't appear at any of those, did you?
I didn't even know about those. I remember one, Mr. Jaffe's office called me like 9 o'clock in the morning and said, "You're supposed to be somewhere now." And I said, "I'm not going anywhere without an attorney." I wasn't presenting myself anywhere without an attorney.
You indicated that you were upset because he had canceled his deposition. It is true. Well, do you know how depositions are set, by the way?
No.
They just send you a notice and they say, by the way, your deposition is going to be set on such and such a date.
Send me a notice?
No, anybody.
Your Honor,
I've never been noticed.
That's just facts, not evidence.
Sustained. She doesn't know how they're set as
Okay.
well. She wants
I've
to
never
know.
been noticed for a deposition. I wouldn't know.
So you wouldn't know about whether or not you're given an opportunity to set a date that's convenient or whether you're just noticed of a particular date.
All that I know about this is Tricia Smith told me that she had scheduled one with Dan, and she had a court reporter, and she was ready, and they were waiting for Dan, and he didn't show up, and he feigned ignorance of the date or something, and she was really annoyed. That's all I know about depositions.
You do know that whether or not he was available to take that deposition, whether or not he was in court, something else came up. The deposition was taken on July 20th, 1987.
I know that he finally showed up for one, but he did it while he knew I was in Hawaii, so I couldn't be there. That was the same trip I was supposed to take the children on, and he was pre-noticed of those dates, and he showed up while I couldn't be there.
Well, your attorney was there, right? Tricia
Right.
Smith is the one who took the deposition.
Yes. But she would have rather had me there, I think.
And the deposition was taken on July 20th, 1987, in which Tricia Smith asked him about all of his finances, all of his declarations, all of his financial papers, all of his tax returns, all that stuff,
Mhm.
back in 1987.
Yes.
And he specifically denied at that time that there were any hidden assets whatsoever, correct?
If that's what it says in there.
There is no hidden money or no hidden bank accounts. There are no hidden assets in any way, shape, or form. You can spend from now until doomsday looking. You won't find anything else. There is nothing else. I know respondent believes otherwise. She's mistaken. If there was anything else, I would have engaged in income tax fraud and probably a lot of other things. There is nothing else.
Except that we found at least those 2 bank accounts that he emptied, so he was obviously lying about those then.
Okay.
And
well,
whatever else there was that I wasn't lucky enough to uncover.
Those bank accounts that you say that were empty, those were part of the records. The only reason you knew about it is because they were on his records. There wasn't anything he was hiding from the records. You just hadn't seen
They were
it
in
before.
bank records, not his records.
Right, and all of his bank records were turned over. When Tricia Smith did the deposition, he turned over all of his bank records, and you even indicated yourself that one of your friends was going through it when you were representing yourself, and they saw that, correct?
Yes,
So there
during the
wasn't-
trial in 1989.
Right, well, you were representing yourself at that time. By that time, you didn't have an attorney who was going through the records. You were going through them yourself,
But
and that's when you saw that there had been a transfer of money. There wasn't anything hidden about it. It was right there in the records, correct?
see, you've already just shown me a supposed settlement offer that he was in a friendly tone making me that I wouldn't accept, and he doesn't mention that money missing in there.
It's on his bank records that were turned over as far back as 1987, correct?
I don't know that. Tricia Smith was complaining in 1988 that she had not received certain bank records. They could have been the ones that were turned over in late 88 to Tricia Smith, just before she got off the case.
And when you questioned him about it at the divorce trial, it came out. There wasn't anything that was being hidden. And he explained that there was a transfer of money from his savings account to his checking account so that he could pay $62,000 worth of state income tax for 1984. And he showed the documentation for doing that.
No, that's wrong. He said at court in the divorce trial that he emptied those accounts because his brother Larry needed $1 million.
Okay, if you would take a look at the divorce transfer, page 614, with respect to the question of the $80,000 withdrawal, you can read this page and see if that refreshes your recollection about what he said that $80,000 withdrawal was for.
But see, the money that I'm talking about earlier was withdrawn 2 days before he walked out in February of 85. So this is different money here.
You
On May
were
5th.
complaining about two withdrawals of money, and
Before he left.
Before he left.
Well, May 5th, 1985 isn't before he left.
Well, these are the only two, the $80,000 withdrawal and the $175,000 were the only two that you were complaining about, and he was explaining what happened to that money. Did he not explain that?
These aren't the same monies. This says the reason I borrowed $62,000 that day from the corporation, this wasn't even, I don't think, corporation money, was so I could pay state income taxes. He testified in that trial that his brother Larry
Well,
needed $1 million.
okay, we'll get to that. You complained about two. One was the $80,000 withdrawal, which you said emptied an account. I'm asking you about that one right now. Does he not explain that he emptied that account to pay the taxes and paid the $62,000 with the state taxes?
All I remember specifically was these withdrawals were before he walked out on February 28th. Right here, he says it's an $80,000 withdrawal that was made on May 5th of 1985. I think we're
So
talking
he was
about different withdrawals.
Okay.
This may be a pension fund withdrawal or 1 million of other withdrawals.
With respect to the withdrawal of $175,000, he explained that he loaned that to his brother Larry, correct?
Let me see here. Is that what it says? He paid the loan on April 4th, 40 days later with interest, and Dan forgot. $177,590. That's one of them.
That's the $175,000 that you questioned about. And he showed the documentation that he made the loan to his brother on
On
February
February
22nd.
22nd.
And the loan was repaid on April the 4th
But
with
he never,
interest.
he never showed that anywhere.
Doesn't he show it and explain it right there and show the
Yeah,
documentation?
because he got caught. He showed it, but it never showed up anywhere before.
It was in the records. That's how you knew about it. It was in his bank records.
I don't think it went like that.
Well, how else did you know about it?
It showed withdrawals and closing accounts.
Right,
So
it
where
showed
would the
it-
money have come back in? What account?
This is what he shows you here. He's got a copy of the money market account statement for the month of April that showed where the money had been repaid.
Well, how would I know about that account? All I had were the bank statements that two things were closed right before he walked out.
Right,
And
and
he
you
never admitted
confronted
that the
him
money-
with that, and he explained and showed the documentation
He explained
of
he
what had
forgot.
happened.
He explained he forgot, and now that the judge ordered him to come back after the lunch break and explain where that money went, that's his explanation of where the money
The
went.
judge didn't order him
Yes,
to.
he did.
You asked him to explain it, and he did.
We took a lunch break, and the judge ordered him to, during lunch, tell me where that money went,
Okay,
Mr.
and
Broderick.
he
And he
did,
came
didn't
back
he?
and did that.
Okay, and he explained where it was, and he explained and he showed where it had gone, and then it had come back, correct?
I guess.
Okay. You also testified that during the course of the divorce litigation that you appeared at several settlement conferences, but that there was only one conference where Judge Murphy ever talked to you, correct?
Yes.
And that Judge Murphy expressed that Dan was playing games and that he was very upset and ordered Jerry Berry to be there for that conference. That was your description of that.
The fifth one that I went to, yes.
Isn't it true, Mrs. Broderick, that there were at least three or four settlement conferences where you appeared before Judge Murphy and where Judge Murphy talked to you and talked to either Mr. Berry or Dan and tried to settle the case?
After the day that you just spoke about, where he called Mr. Barry and said, come over here, then we had other meetings with Judge Murphy. But these mandatory settlement conferences were not in front of Judge Murphy. I don't know who they were in front of.
What you indicated, or at least the impression that I got when you testified, is that you showed up for all these hearings and then you only got one settlement conference in front of Judge Murphy. There was only one time that you got to talk to Judge Murphy and attempt to settle the case.
That was the last mandatory settlement conference. Judge Murphy took temporary control of the case. And that's when he, on that day, I believe, nominated this Dr. Des person to, are we in May of 88?
He had at least 3 or 4 different meetings with you where he was
After that day.
Okay, well, you didn't mention anything about those other settlement
that
conferences
last-
with Judge Murphy.
Well, it wasn't really named that. Judge Murphy appointed Dr. Des to talk to all of these psychiatrists or psychologists about the case, about the custody. Judge Murphy said it was his opinion that if we could just settle the custody, everything else would fall into place. And that sounded good to me. So he appointed this, do you want me to go on? He appointed this man named Dr. Des, who I never heard of, who was supposed to talk to all the psychologists involved in this case, not talk to Dan Broderick or Betty Broderick or the children. No
Okay.
principals.
Okay, stop for a second. Did you not have settlement, at least 3 or 4 settlement conferences attempting to settle not the child custody issue, but also the finances with Judge Murphy, where he was attempting to get that settled? And Dan Broderick was there
No.
and or his attorney was there.
No, when Judge Murphy took that last mandatory settlement conference, then Judge Murphy very kindly, more as a person than a judge, thought he'd do the children thing. But I don't remember Judge Murphy having anything to do with any money. And we
You
worked
don't
that
recall-
summer. We worked that summer, and I went right back into Judge Murphy just before school started in September 88. And I was devastated about what happened with Dr. Dess.
You
And I
don't
think
re-
that's the end of
okay.
Murphy.
We'll talk about Dr. Dess in a minute, but you don't recall attempting to settle the financial situation with Judge Murphy at all, telling him that you wanted $1 million cash, you wanted $25,000 a month, no credits for any property that had already been dispersed. That was what you wanted.
That's an offer that Tricia Smith put in writing in early 87 and sent to Dan's attorneys.
I'm
So I
ask-
would have stuck to that offer.
Okay.
But-
And you weren't willing to compromise at all? were
Judge
you?
Murphy was not involved in the money at all. We didn't get to that. We were doing the children with Judge Murphy. And then he said we'd get to the money after we did the children.
You complained about the fact that the court was sealed during the course of the divorce, that the courtrooms were closed, that the file was sealed.
Yes.
It is true, is it not, that at the first hearing that you had was in December of 86, when Mr. Hargraves was representing you. The hearing was not sealed and the file was not sealed. The only thing that was requested to be sealed were the financial documents of Dan Broderick.
No, I think Mr. Hargreaves agreed, and I was protesting to seal everything on that day, the first time I appeared in court in 86.
Isn't it true that Mr. Berry, who was representing Dan Broderick at the time, requested to seal the file, and Mr. Hargraves, you indicated no, you didn't want to. Mr. Hargraves indicated no. Mr. Berry said, all I'm talking about are the financial documents. Obviously, Mr. Broderick had a lot of money. Obviously, he was filing declarations that indicated he had a lot of money. He had concerns about other people knowing how much money he had. The only request was to seal the financial documents, and the only agreement that Mr. Hargraves made was to seal the financial documents at that hearing.
I think he agreed to seal everything. That was my understanding, that he sealed everything.
That hearing was open. Anybody could have
It was
come
the
in.
very first one, so we had not agreed to seal it yet. And right away, in that first hearing, we sealed it. Yes, no one was present. I never had anyone I wanted to bring with me. I was just opposing it on the principle of the matter.
Well, you complained a lot that everything that was happening during the course of this divorce was behind closed doors in sealed
Yes.
courtrooms.
It became a problem like that.
Okay, was there anything that was happening behind closed doors or in sealed courtrooms in December of 1986 that you want to tell us about?
No, but I didn't think that there was any reason to have it all sealed up.
The contempt hearings were not sealed either. They were open, weren't they? You made a motion to open the hearings and the judge ruled that they were open.
Gee, I don't know. Would I have an attorney that did that? Because I didn't do that. It was my understanding from the very first court thing when Hargreaves agreed to seal everything, that everything was sealed. And we never got it unsealed officially. A judge did allow my friend Ronnie Brown to come with me to several things for moral support, but that was in a violation of it being a technically sealed courtroom.
Excuse me, Your Honor, for just a moment.
Certainly.
We have about 10 minutes left, so hang in there. We're almost done.
Okay, do you recall Tricia Smith requesting at the April hearing in 1987 that the hearing be held open and the court ordering that the hearing would be open?
Every time when I changed attorneys after Hargreaves, we argued to open the court every single time, but I don't know that it ever was.
Does it indicate that the court indicates on page 7 of this hearing, 70, excuse me, this hearing is open today?
Yes. But I don't know, what hearing is it?
The first contempt hearing in 87. The settlement conferences that you had with Judge Murphy, those were also open. People could come in and listen to what was going on. There wasn't anything happening behind sealed, closed doors, was there?
Well, see, like that hearing there was a contempt hearing in Judge Joseph's courtroom in this courthouse.
Excuse me, Mrs. Broderick, I'm asking about the settlement conferences now. Those weren't closed. In fact, you had, as you indicated, you had Ronnie Brown, your friend there. In fact, you had a man from Halt there. you remember a man from Halt sitting in on one of your settlement conferences and getting up in the middle of it and saying, there's nothing wrong going on here, and walking out?
No, the man never said that, but I do remember a conversation with the judge asking who the man was because it was a closed hearing and he wanted to know who he was. And when he found out who he was, he didn't throw him out.
At the divorce trial, there was a request to seal the hearing. At the time of the trial, there was a request by Mr. Broderick.
Every time
To
we
close the
appeared in court, they wanted it sealed and I fought it every time.
And the request was based on several letters by the children's psychologist, letters written by Dr. Roth, by Dr. Sparta, by Dr. Audrey Taryn Phillips. Those were letters written by the children's psychologists who were requesting that the hearing be closed because of your conduct and how they felt that was the public dissemination of that would be harmful to the children.
Those letters were written after the argument was started by a newspaper in that courtroom, not by me, that they wanted this proceeding open. So all these lawyers came from other law firms and things and had this big fight about opening the courtroom.
No, I'm
And
not
those-
talking about the lawyers. I'm talking about the psychologists who were requesting the
Yes,
judge.
that's what I'm saying. Those letters were written as a response to that legal action brought by a newspaper, not by me, although I was in favor of having it open. And the dates on those letters should be late 88, early 89, during the trial.
Well, let me just ask you if these are the letters that you're referring to. May I have marked as People's 101? A series of 3 letters.
You want all three marked as 101?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, so marked.
Indicating for the record, one written by Ruth Roth, one written by Steve Sparta, and one written by Audrey Taryn Phillips. Are these the letters that you're referring to?
I don't see a date on this one. See, I wouldn't have known these letters came to court. If these are the ones they used in court during the trial, these were letters written earlier when Dan threatened to sue the newspaper for going public with this story.
These are letters
July
that were
of
written in
88.
July of 88, where there was an indication that the only person who would,
I have an objection to that. There's witnesses that can follow through reading documents.
Sustained. The document speaks for itself, best evidence.
was there anything that went on during any of these hearings that you feel that everybody needs to know?
I think the nature of what went on here, by 1989, people needed to know.
Well, and there are transcripts of all these hearings. There are transcripts of the contempt hearings. There are transcripts of the divorce trial. You
But
had
nobody could
friends.
get the transcripts.
Well, we've got them right here. Is there anything that's happened?
They're
Your
sealed.
Honor, now,
They're not sealed. They're not
They've
sealed
always
for
been
purposes
sealed
of this
before.
trial.
Okay, just,
for this trial,
This
Your Honor,
trial.
this is very misleading. The district attorney knows it is.
no, just no speeches in front of the jury if you want to
Were
approach
we
the bench.
approached the bench?
Yes.
Mike,
Pull up.
Wait for my brains. Go ahead.
my question to you relates to your very constant and very loudly made claim during the course of this that things were happening in sealed courtrooms behind closed doors. And my question to you is there anything that happened in any of these hearings that you want people to know about?
I just thought it was a perversion of the legal system, of what we believed is the justice system, that Dan would use the courts against me and keep me and the children from getting any sort of a fair settlement in a divorce that he wanted
But there
since
wasn't,
1985.
but there wasn't anything that you're suggesting that you want people to know that we're hiding from them. That's all sealed up, right?
It's all been all sealed up.
Okay.
Only you could get it because of the criminal thing. No one, insofar
But what
as
was going on in sealed courtrooms that upsets you so much?
that I was being charged $10,000 for dropping dogs off, and that I was being kept from my children, and that there was no settlement, and there never would be a settlement, according to Dan's words. This will never be over until one of us is gone in a public newspaper. That's not the way it's supposed to work. I'm supposed to get equal protection under the laws, and so are the children.
Dan's words were not that. Dan's words were, you want me, you want my money, you want my death or my ruination in this community. You want me destroyed and over and done with, and unless and until that happens, you are not going to be happy. That's what his words were to you.
I've never heard those words of Dan. All I know is what was printed in the newspaper is that the divorce trial would settle some minor differences, but Dan's words, this will never be over until one of us is gone. And that was a threat to me.
You cross-examined him at the divorce trial, correct?
Yes.
You had him on the stand for several days, as a matter of fact, correct?
I don't remember if it was several days, but
And you don't recall him saying to you, your anger is the driving force, and your anger and your hatred is the driving force of this proceeding and of the harm that our children have suffered?
that's what Dan would have liked everyone to believe. My driving force was to get a settlement and get him out of my life and have a life. And he was not going to give me that
When he
under
said
any
to you,
circumstances. That's why we were in court, trying to force him to a settlement.
and when he said to you, you want me, you want my ruination in this community, you want my death, you want me destroyed and over and done with, and unless and until that happens, you are not going to be happy. You didn't deny that, did you? You
I
didn't
laughed.
say,
The court reporter could not take down my laughter. He was such an arrogant jerk. He wanted people to think that those are his attorney words, and that's not true at all. He knew I just wanted a settlement like I should have had and like the children should have had. And to be over and done with him, he was obviously a fool.
Your Honor, perhaps this would be an appropriate time for.
All right, we'll take our afternoon recess at this time, ladies.
And we'll take our evening recess. Good grief, it just gets worse. Ugh. Pot meat kettle. Ugh. She's so frustrating. She doesn't look so happy now, but she does smirk an awful lot. You're right, Shenny. Anytime she can get that smirk, she smirks it. That was riveting. Want me to drive? Well, I was going to take Betty's car and drive myself into a wall. Just bump it. I don't care, Puddletown. You go for it. You're saying, can I slap her to teach her, or can you? I got it. Sorry. Don't advise. Not advocating for any violence anywhere. All right. Well, that's the fun for today. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I know, Puddletown. It was a bad joke, and then I had to back out of it. Yes. So tomorrow, the fun that never ends, like the song that never ends, we'll continue on. We're not done. We're not done with Betty and the state. It's never, ever going to end. We might be in purgatory. I'm not sure. I'll have to look. Not that I know what it looks like, but thanks, Jenny. I appreciate it. Thanks, Gabby. And you're welcome. Flashman, you said it right here. I'm going to get pulled. Irk. Thanks, Puddletown. Flashman, normally I say no, but I'm going to just roll with it this time because it does feel like it will be 12 more years of Betty. So, tomorrow, probably 6 again, because I think I'll have to check. I checked a few days ahead, and now I don't remember. So it's like, there's no point in me doing that unless I write it down, and I didn't. So there's that. I'll check tomorrow, but I'm going to say 6 Eastern time. Again, just so we're not running super late for anybody. But so everyone, have a great night. Do something relaxing to get the Betty off your brain. And enjoy your day tomorrow. And we'll see you guys all tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon. Whoever it is, whatever it is for you guys. Yes, scrambled eggs for brains when you look forward. It does. 81. Sometimes I'm surprised I can open the door to let myself out of this room at the end of the night. Like, what? Where? I don't know. Because I don't know. It's really been hard the last couple days to listen to her. All right, that's it. I'm gonna go. So you all enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow with either a buffering remix or it'll play just normal. I'm gonna go with the first one. See you guys all later.